Okay, hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for episode number 22 of Talking About Horses. In these broadcasts, I try to bring you some of the best riders, trainers, horsemen, equine advocates, and thought leaders in the industry for tips, insights, and stories. You can listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle, either through Facebook, YouTube, or by downloading the podcast from the iTunes store. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by international gaited horse clinician, teacher of horses and humans, judge, writer, artist, educational video producer, that's a long list, as well as friend of mine for over 15 years now, Elizabeth Graves. Liz has been a multi-licensed and breed judge for over 30 years throughout the United States and Canada. In addition to this, she's developed judges' education, testing, and licensing programs. She's a popular invited clinician at such events as Equine Affair in Ohio, California, back when they had it in California, and Massachusetts, Horse World Expos in Pennsylvania and Maryland, as well as other horse fairs throughout the United States. She has had articles published in Western Horseman magazine, Trail Rider magazine, and a laundry list of gaited horse magazines, newsletters, and other publications. So we were chatting, I tried to do the math, and it looks like Liz and I have known each other for at least a decade and a half, closing in on 2 already. So Liz, thank you so much for joining me for this broadcast.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's going to be fun.
Oh, I think so. I
love this venue you've created here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So for anybody who's out there, for the probably 3 people in the gaited horse community that might not know who you are in the whole world, and for some of our listeners who maybe don't have gaited horses that might not know who you are, in addition to the little introduction that I gave, can you tell us a little bit more about who is Liz Graves?
Really a horse fanatic of all horses, gaited and not. My history started, though, with the gaited horses in 1978 when I actually moved to Virginia. As a child, my mother had one. She actually had a gaited Appaloosa, not a Wackaloosa, but a gaited Appaloosa, and I was not allowed to ride it, and I was too young to know what it was. So when I moved to Virginia in 1978, my first introduction was to the Tennessee walking horse. And I'd never seen anything like it. So I was mesmerized, and I'd never seen movements like that. It was so different from a simple walk, trot, canter. And so I started on this journey. But one of the other things that brought me to it was I was brought up with a very military and classical horsemanship background through my mother and my grandfather. And some of the riding styles I was seeing on the Tennessee walking horse was troubling to me because it was very opposite of what I had been taught. And about having a balance seat, and even knowing, working forward seat, having a balance seat. And so I was seeing some horsemanship that was troubling, yet I was seeing a breed to me that seemed as versatile as any other breed, non-gaited, in the industry, but looking at the horsemanship, to me, felt like it was holding this great breed back. And so I really got involved in the versatility of the Tennessee walking horse, and then all these other wonderful breeds started coming out, gaited horses, as time went on, as the years went by, because the Tennessee walking horse and the American gaited American saddlebred was very popular too down in the South, and I judged them and trained quite a number of them in my young years. But if you think about the gaited horse and what I've learned now, there's over 72 different breeds of gaited horses worldwide.
Wow.
We kind of think that we here in America, we're kind of the founders or the base breeds evolved from here. They did not. We have about 26 gaited breeds that are now in the U.S., some of them imported, some of them created through multi-breeds. But there are 72 and more gaited breeds worldwide. They have been a part of history for thousands of years. And so that's what got me so involved wanting to learn this and wanting to learn what this thing called gait was, why it was, how come they did it. It became a real passion and a real kind of insanity, to be perfectly honest.
I get it. Horses will do that to you, right?
Yeah. So, I kind of brought with myself in this from my base of stock horses, because I grew up with quarter horses and Appaloosas, and then bred and raised and judged thoroughbreds for a decade as well. And it was something new that had gotten me, that I knew nothing about, that really got me pumped up and excited. And I thought I could help. I thought I could help with some of the horsemanship issues I was also seeing, because I'm really compassionate about horses. So I was seeing horses not happy. And, just as I thought, quarter horses and other horses sometimes not happy. So the goal was to bring the education up and into the gaited horse world. And it has been a wonderful journey, I'm telling you. And I'm not done yet.
Good. Well, and it's taken you all over, yeah?
It has taken me all over the world. Yeah, I have been taught in several countries in Europe and judged throughout Canada and judged through the U.S. And, when the clinic stage started, we didn't used to call them clinics. We just kind of called them educational gatherings, is what they were called, even from the time I was a child, when Monty Foreman was here in the Minnesota area for a year living with Jack Brainerd. And so we would have all these educational gatherings. Granted, I was a little teeny tiny tot on a Shetland pony, but I learned so much. And so it's just been bringing all of that through my experience and bringing it into the gaited horse and find where people will be okay with it, and try not to offend. Sometimes you do, but try to help them and their horses and give them results.
Right.
You've got to give results. They've got to be able to see and feel that what you're telling them is true and honest.
So true. And I like what you said there about trying not to offend. And sometimes you will, but I think you're absolutely right, because if you're offending somebody when you're trying to teach them, you're just going to shut their mind off, right? You're going to close their mind, and they're not going to be receptive to the things you have to say anyway.
Yep, the door closes. Just like if you get big with a horse, you get too big with a horse, what do? You shut them down.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
So now they're not listening, they're in self-preservation. Same with people.
Right.
When they feel offended, and some people choose to be offended, that's just who they are. But in general, if you try not to offend a horse and try not to offend a person, you can keep things going and keep the door open and keep their knowledge and their curiosity going. Right.
So true. And that's, of course, that's important when you're trying to share these kinds of things. So 72 different breeds, that's I'm still rolling my mind over that. So I could probably name off the cuff maybe 8 if I was really thinking. And I see a lot of gaited horses actually throughout the year, and I blame you for my knowledge of gaited horses. I give everybody that caveat. I say, look, everything I know about gaited horses, which is maybe 3 things, I know from Liz Graves. So so I definitely need to get with you more to learn more about these. But so in these 72, tell me, or 72 plus, what are some of the more rare breeds that maybe our listeners haven't heard of?
Yeah, and I can't even hardly pronounce them.
Oh, really?
But people would recognize, like through Europe, they would recognize the names Dale and Fell, like the Fell pony. The Icelandic is a European breed. It's not an American breed.
Right.
The Highlander, another European one, is the Norman horse. There's a Bosnian gaited horse. So there's many. And then Asia, you've got another, 25 in Asia.
Wow.
Think about that. Yeah. And there's, like, and I'm probably pronouncing these. A lot of people would know the Marawi horse, though.
Okay.
Yep. And the Mongolian horse. There's a sandalwood horse. There's a Siamese horse. There's a Tibetan horse. There's a Timor pony. There's one called Tuva. And those are Asian horses. And then the American horses. Let's go, American saddlebred. have never seen one of these, but there is an Andorras horse, a Bolivian Paso, Campalio, Cracker horse. A lot of people know the Cracker horses. I've never seen one yet. I'm doing research right now on them.
Oh, okay. I've got a friend actually down in Florida that has one.
That's where they're from. They're from Florida.
Yeah.
And then, some common ones are the Kentucky Mountain Horse, the Mangalora Marchador, which is now in the U.S., the McCurdy Plantation Horse, the Foxtrotter, the Mountain Pleasure Horse, Pasofino, Peruvian Paso, Racking Horses, Rocky Mountains, Spotted Saddle Horse, Standardbred, Tiger Horse, which is a new registry, Virginia Pocket Horse. I haven't met one of those yet.
That's an interesting sound.
But then we have African gaited horses.
Really?
Yeah, we've got like 6 of those. So, and I can't pronounce any of them. One I can, the Berber. I can pronounce that. The Fulani, the African Shalapard. So we have 6 African horses. But the other thing that's really interesting, and this is something that my friend now passed, Lee and I talked about a lot because we experienced it a lot and still do. We have other breeds that are not considered gated, but we see gaits coming out in them. Okay, so now in some new research that I just got here, I've learned we actually did have some gated Arabians.
Okay.
Gated Arabian horses, and I think there were 2 or 3 specifically. But then, and I've experienced some in the Boxer Curlies, and I actually have a box trotter myself that has a little bit Boxer Curly in him as well. So that's kind of common in fox trotters. I've had several quarter horses over the years that show gait. That's coming from the gated Morgan lineage in some of them.
Gotcha.
The Andalusian, we know the Appaloosa, the Canadian, the Canadian
really?
horse. I don't know. And they're really neat horses.
They are. I've actually worked with a couple of those. A clinic I did years ago in Massachusetts. We had a couple Canadian horses come in. Now they were not gated though. So is it certain lines of them that are?
It's just certain ones that it pops up once in a blue moon. They're not considered a gated breed in any way, shape, or form. But every once in a while you see one come out somehow through the lineage, that DMRT3, that mutated gene in the nervous system pops up and you get a gated one. Even in a Frisian Hackneys, we saw gated Hackneys. Once in a while, we know, everybody knows we have gated Morgans. And then the Spanish Barb is also, or the Spanish Mustang or the Spanish Barb. When I would go to the Pryor Mountains, Dave and I would travel to the Pryors to study the horses and camp with them. And back then when we would go, there were still some gated ones left. I don't know if there are anymore because there were so few left. But those horses had a lot of Spanish Barb in them.
Okay.
So they still existed. I've been told that there's been some thoroughbreds. I raised thoroughbreds for a decade, and I never had a gated one. But boy, would I've been thrilled to have one.
Sure. Absolutely.
So it's funny how sometimes the lineage, because, some of these breeds, as much as we will say that they're pure, when you get to world history and thousands of years of horses crossing and being shipped all over, once in a while, one will pop up where you don't expect it to be. And so it's really fun, but people don't know what to do with it. That's where gated knowledge comes in and helps them.
There you go.
If a horse has got the genetic, the wiring gene, what we call the wiring gene, and then has the conformation for gait, you want to keep them working towards their gait and what their conformation is for their gait, and not put them in a shape that is not conducive to their conformation, or they become very unhappy mentally, and then physically they will start breaking down. So understanding conformation and working within any horse's conformation, be it a quarter horse or whatever, you want to work within its conformations because there are many within a certain breed. So that's a really important thing we've lost today. It used to be through all of the judging clinics years and years ago, you had better know conformation. And there were very rigid rules on the percentages of what you gave certain parts of the body, and they had to be balanced and they had to be tied together. They couldn't look like mixed parts, but they could be typey within their breed. So you had to know that, what was a good conformation, but what was considered typey, very common within that breed's characteristics. And we've lost a lot of that, and I think that's kind of giving us some problems in horsemanship because people don't know about conformation, even though it was taught through 4-H and Pony Club very heavily and through every judging program for years and years and years. But it's lost, and if we could get that back, I think people would have a better time teaching their horses and shaping them properly so they have a healthy conformation or healthy structure for their riding, because riding should make the body healthier, not deteriorate it.
Right, absolutely. That's something I share with my students all the time, and it's a quote that I got from Charles de Cunfee. He said, there is no riding in neutrality. You're either building them up or you're breaking them down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. And I kind of always joke when we talk about engagement and collection and self-carriage, I joke that we're either working toward collection or we're working toward navicular,
there's another one. And here's another really interesting point that's happened in my lifetime through the gaited horses. We're seeing, we never heard of navicular and gaited horses. It didn't exist. It existed in my quarter horse world, but now I run across so many gaited horses that have been diagnosed and x-rayed with navicular.
Really?
And it's because of the upside down postures, putting these horses on the forehand.
It makes perfect sense. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so they're breaking them down. And so navicular it's not uncommon anymore. It's actually getting pretty common.
Yeah.
And has been for a while.
Right.
And that's a horsemanship problem, and that's a lack of knowledge. And so that's why we need to inspire people to really start learning the technicals of what a horse is, what a horse is supposed to be in health, and how to help support these postures. So they last us into their 30s. I mean, all my horses get really old. I got a 35-year-old now. Nobody ever goes early here.
Oh, that's great, though. That's great. Wow. I love that. So now you were talking about the conformation and how that used to be a big part within the judging, but that it's not now. What happened? Why is it not now?
Honestly, politics.
Oh.
You think, and in my opinion, this is my opinion, it's coming through the show world. And what happens in the show world, in me growing up, because I grew up in it with many, many breeds as a professional showing for clients, gated and non-gated, was the judges were highly educated, and you were had to be highly educated as well. When a rider entered an arena, even as a judge myself, we were taught there's no head on that person. Sure,
right.
No face.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And every class is a new class. You judge it so differently from the other. It is that performance that's happening right in front of you right now. And then you clean your mind and you have a clean slate for the next class. Well, that doesn't exist now. There's a lot of what happened with so much money.
Yeah.
And money causes problems. In the show world. I mean, if you understand, if you get a world grand champion horse, that could be between $500,000, depending on what kind of facility and all the services you offer, $500,000 to $2 million in your barn the first year in income.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of politics and a lot of people taking care of each other, and even kind of sharing the kitty to make sure that income keeps coming into those barns.
Gotcha.
And so money has created the problem. And so the morality of judging for the horse and the performance at that moment has become very minimized.
Oh, and boy, isn't that within every breed too? And that's such a shame. But it's exactly what you said. And I think it's in every industry, right? When there's competition and there's money involved, we start to bring out the egos and the BS, right?
I remember when I was, I had a mentor, and he's passed away now, but he wrote many books, and he was the president of AQHA and the Arabian Horse Association probably 3 times, named Don Burt. And
Don, okay.
And I was a child when I would show under him, and then he became somebody who helped me set up these judging programs for the gaited horses, because they didn't actually have judging programs back then. they would just pull judges from other breeds, gaited or not. And he told a wonderful story about being on an airplane, going to judge a show, and he was sitting next to another man who was going to judge a goldfish show.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
He said there were guppy shows. But he talked about how this judge was telling him, because we had this problem in horses, where they would do surgical alterations on the goldfish.
No.
Yes. And I actually met a vet when I lived in Virginia who specialized in aquatic medicine and knew all about that.
That's incredible.
So when money comes into things, there are no rules. They will do anything for
Wow.
a ribbon or money in their barn to keep the business going.
That's crazy. We're gonna have enhancements on fish. Wow. Yeah. But I mean, of course, it's the same thing, right? Because presumably then you would have specialty guppy and goldfish breeders, and
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's just like, I mean, we know that we have had a problem with Arabian horses being surgically altered, especially those that I did my practical in college at an Egyptian Arabian farm in Virginia for my practical grade, and this is when the heads were getting very deformed and extremely itched, and they're more so now than they were when I was going to college.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the problems was monkey mouth.
Yes.
An overbite, as a confirmation judge, you always look at the teeth in a halter class.
Right.
And so you always look for overbite or underbite. Well, underbite, I never saw until I got into the Egyptian Arabian world, and that's called monkey mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And they would surgically alter to get rid of the monkey mouth.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
So there's a lot of, I think about another one that's really interesting was the club feet. It used to be a club-footed horse was never, you were shamed if you brought one to a horse show ground.
Right, exactly.
That was a genetic fault. It was passed on.
Mm-hmm.
And then they learned surgical techniques to help correct these club feet on these horses. And where do they end up? They end up in a show ring, a quarter show. We had walkers that were breeding double clubbed hooves. Yet that's early on when they were
Wow.
surgery, and you'd never know. But then a lot of the offspring would show up with club feet later.
Right.
Yep.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that could certainly be a 2-week broadcast in itself, how crooked the industry gets, right? And it is. It's in every breed. It's in every discipline. It's in, unfortunately, but there's more.
Oh, it's the human factor.
It is. Yeah, that's so true.
It's not the horse's fault. It's not the horse's doing.
Right. Exactly.
In any way, shape, or form.
Exactly. And I tend to feel, and tell me your thoughts on this, though. I tend to feel that there are way more people in this industry that wouldn't do that, right?
Oh my gosh, no kidding.
We just see a lot of them.
I'm going to ask, you see a lot of them. You and I see a lot of them because we travel and do so many different things within the industry.
Yes.
Most people don't see these things or know about them.
Right.
So I'm going to say, the icky part is 7 to 10%. That's nothing.
Right. That sounds about right.
The other 90% are really hardworking people that they want to do something on their downtime.
Mm-hmm.
They love animals, horses. They're nurturing, and they want to share it with their friends.
Right.
And so that is the majority of this industry.
Yep.
But also, these wonderful people can be the victims of that other 10%, and that's where we come in.
Exactly, because the other 90%, they're trying potentially to learn or trying to enjoy, trying to whatever, and so they can sometimes fall victim to their own unknowing, maybe,
They're unknowing.
when they get around the others.
That's
right.
not their fault. Because, you know as well as I do, it is a lifetime of nonstop learning.
Absolutely.
To understand all of this. I mean, and we're still not going to get it all by the time we're out of here.
Right.
You know? But maybe by hooking up with really good educators, we can get their knowledge base larger, faster to help protect themselves.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. That's half of why I started these podcasts, so that I could get myself exposed to more knowledge, like you and like the other guests that I have on here, because I know I can't learn it all by accident or by trial and error.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's everybody's experiences put together that you learn from.
Exactly. Yep. So, oh my gosh, good deal. So let's go back a little bit. And you had mentioned, so first I want to say, I was reading your bio, and you went to school in Stanton, Virginia?
I went to many schools.
Okay.
Okay, I did my equine science at Blue Ridge Community College when they had an equestrian program there.
Okay.
Then I did my and I did my public speaking also at Blue Ridge Community College. Then I did my human psychology at Mary Baldwin College in Stanton.
That's actually where we live now, is Stanton.
Oh, you do? Well,
yeah.
I was also taught at the cosmetology school there in Stanton.
No kidding.
Well, I taught, and I was their director of admissions too while I was training at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I went down to Virginia Tech, and I did a lot of because I went through in high school here in Minnesota. I went through the farrier program through Anoka Technical School. So I actually was a farrier for many years.
Wow.
Not
Okay.
full time. Yep. But I did other people's horses and did all of mine. I don't do that now. I'm too old to stand under a horse. But then I went down to Virginia Tech and took all my corrective farrier courses down there. And I also took all my camelid medicine courses down there because
I saw a deal about that too. What was that about? Tell me about that.
Well, I got involved in llamas. Because they're lateral, it was another gated something.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, and so I purchased llamas to figure out how to train them because they were so different from horses.
Yes.
And I was not having good success.
No.
Because they weren't a horse.
Right.
And they were so different. But what I learned in the llama training, and even later, not long ago, the elephant training, to adjust. And see what an animal is and not put them all in one basket.
Yeah.
So I went down there and took all my camelid, and so I ended up doing that, then getting hired for some years, still training at home at full time, but working for an alpaca breeding facility in Virginia. And so I was training alpacas and delivering babies and showing alpacas.
That's fantastic.
It's been a big vast world of experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And it was great. Whenever I was reading through your bio, I saw the mention of the camelid training or the camelid education. And I got pretty excited about that because I don't know if we've even chatted about any of this in the time that we've known each other, but I spent a couple years actually training camels to ride for some zoos.
Oh, I have always wanted to do a camel. And I got one call from Pennsylvania after I moved back to Minnesota in 95 from some old walking horse breeders asking if I wanted to train a camel. And I said, well, I can't stand myself, but I could set it up in my big garage. I had a huge garage at my other ranch. And it never did come, but I was so excited. And I thought, I'm going to get to do a camel.
There you go.
But I didn't get to.
They are fascinating. They're fascinating creatures. I keep saying someday whenever I've got enough property, I might end up with a little personal zoo like that because, man, they're so unique as individuals, similar like the llamas, but different.
I'm curious. The one thing I'm curious about, though, with them, Patrick, is the wiring gene the same DMRT mutated gene in our gated horses? I haven't found an answer on that yet. And same with the elephant, because I have elephant training experience. So I'm really wondering about the wiring gene. Because,
that's interesting.
that wiring gene, what Lee Ziegler and I always called the wiring gene because they hadn't identified it as a mutated gene at that point in the nervous system. We know that creates the lateralness. So the giraffe is lateral, the camel's lateral, the llama's lateral, the elephant is lateral. And the other thing that's really interesting is how many dogs do you see that are lateral?
Yes, absolutely. I used to have a couple Siberian Huskies who would go into their, and I joked it was their Iditarod gait, but they would go into what looked to me like a pace. And they could go all day long. So it would be the same energy-saving gait that we see in the pacing horses.
Yeah. The one interesting thing, though, that I noticed on the dogs, because I studied dogs in comparison, especially German Shepherds, in comparison to Tennessee walking horses, and I've seen the evolution of their conformation that's changed together, too.
That's it. I was just thinking of that as you were saying that. Interesting how the underrun hips and the exaggerated shoulders came about very similarly.
Exactly. So I'm really curious about if it is that same gene creating that, but then we also know conformation is not. The conformation is going to tell you what gait they're going to be able to do. Granted, all of them can probably do a stepping pace because if everybody inverts, look at how many non-gated horses even we see in the performance dressage arena. I don't know if you've had anybody say it, but I have over the years. Say, you got to watch this dressage performance. That's a gated horse. It's not. It's because it's so crammed and jammed and inverted. That it can't do anything else.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have the wiring gene. But also, if you watch the dog situation and compare it to the Tennessee walking horse, watching these dogs that are lateral, when they go relaxed and lift their top line to neutral and get the base of their neck to neutral, then they go and do a four-beat walk. But when they lift and they're excited, or they're braced, they go into that lateral.
Yes.
It's always from the top down. What is the top and what is the emotion also that's affecting the whole top line of the horse? Same with the dog.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Where you look at a llama, its conformation, look at a giraffe, its conformation is built where the neck is straight up.
Yes, exactly.
So all it can do is lateral. It cannot bring it down to like an even four-beat walk. But look at an elephant. Their structure is completely different. Their scapula is almost vertical. It hardly has any angle at all.
Right.
And their spinal processes in their spine, if you look at an elephant, their whole top line is round.
Yes, right.
So emotionally, when they are tight, they'll go to a pace. But when they're relaxed, they'll go to a flat walk and a running walk. But they cannot run.
They can't run, right? And they can't jump either.
They can't jump either, but they can do a flying pace. Yep, Dave was on one that was doing a flying pace. It was a runaway elephant in Thailand.
Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
That is fascinating. And I definitely want to get into, I want to hear more about that Thailand elephant project that you were part of. We'll definitely get into that as we go. That's fascinated me since the moment I learned that you were part of that.
Yeah.
So when we get into this, when we're talking about gated horses and we're talking about non-gated horses, what is gait? What does it mean for any of our listeners that are out there listening? And for all of us, what does it mean for a horse to be gated?
Okay, so let's talk about a walk of any breed is called a gait. A trot of any breed is called a gait.
Mm-hmm.
A canter is considered a gait.
Right.
But they're not easy gaits. Easy
gaits, okay.
There's the difference, is that we have a whole realm of gaits that are really considered easy gaits. They aren't a walk, trot, or canter. And when we talk about gated horses, we don't consider the walk an easy gait. The canter is not an easy gait. It's a gait, but it's not an easy gait. So when we get into easy gaits, we have different foot-fall sequences and aerial and support phase sequences. So all of your easy gaits that makes them so smooth are, except one, are an alternating 2-hoof, 3-hoof support phase sequence. So it's changing from 2 hooves to 3 hooves. So instead of just two, like in a trot with a moment of suspension, you always have 2 hooves and 3 hooves, so you don't get that moment of suspension that keeps it smooth.
Okay.
Now we have one other gait that is not that, and that is what we call the true pure rack, or a speed rack, or what we would call a pure tolt, not a saddle tolt, but a pure tolt, is an alternating 2-hoof, 1-hoof support phase sequence with a moment of suspension in between, the trade-off of the legs. But the horses have to go fast, because what happens if a horse stands on one leg for any amount of time? It's going to fall over.
Same thing when I stand on one leg.
Yep. So it has to change really quickly.
Gotcha.
And do a suspension and jump to 2 legs to support it.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so but it's still smooth because it's so fast. Where a trot is not fast like that.
Right.
That's where you get that upward lift in a trot, is in that moment of suspension.
Okay. So they're referred to as easy gaits because they're smoother to ride then, basically.
You hope.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Not all. Let's talk about some of these gaits, because we talk about the running walk as the glide ride. And it is smooth. It's like when a horse engages into a running walk, which is a rolling transfer of the hooves. You feel like all of a sudden you're on a magic carpet. But, there's just no movement at all. But sometimes in conformation, you get a walking horse that is kind of long backed, really long lengths and proportions in the hind leg assembly, like a long gaskin and a long hop to ground height. They get kind of a wave motion. So it's a kind of a wave back and forth motion, and it's not rough, it's just different. So you can have different feels within the same gait because of conformational influences.
Okay.
So when somebody wants a walking horse, but they'll say, oh, that horse, it really bothers my back. It may be one of those horses that really moves like that wave, where maybe a shorter coupled horse isn't going to have that kind of wave motion back and forth. It's not that it brings you out of the saddle, it just moves your body. Now, for me, when I have background, I like the walking horse with that big wave, because it's the first horse I'll ride in the training string in the morning, because it loosens my back up. It actually doesn't tighten mine. Other people's, it bothers there.
I'm so glad that you said that, actually, because that's something that I've always noticed, is that there are some walkers, specifically because I've trained a lot of walkers through the years, and I have a handful that show up to clinics throughout the years, and there are some of them that I will admit really make me sore.
Yep. It's too much movement. It's not too much. It's just a lot of movement.
It's a lot of movement, yeah, and it's very different movement.
They get really loose, because looseness is a part of that running walk gait. So if they get really loose and relaxed, and they're really striding deep behind, and then really covering ground in the front, they will move the base of your back and forth.
Yeah.
For me, it feels good, but for some people, it does not feel good.
Right.
I tend to like it.
Okay.
But, that's where you need to ride and not judge one horse within a breed as being a gait you don't like. You have to understand there can be different feels within the same gait because of conformation variables.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. And I'm taking notes as we go here. I do that for all of our broadcasts. Someday somebody's going to find this notebook from all these broadcasts, and they're going to laugh at all the notes.
Stacks of notebooks here.
Good.
Because I keep a lot of journaling on horse stuff.
Okay. Perfect.
Not for a podcast, just for writing articles and things later.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So now we know what the easy gaits, kind of, well, a little bit about what they are. And gosh, it sounds like there's only about 42 million of them. So,
keep it fun.
Right. So I've got a kind of a two-part question. The first is, how does the gait happen? And the second part, the part that's always fascinated me, is how the hell do you keep track of what they all are?
That takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So part of what happens with the gait happening, and we have horses that are very strong gaited, and we have horses that are very weak gaited. You know, and everybody says, "Oh, I got a gaited horse, and it's not gaiting, and aren't they supposed to be naturally gaited?"
Well, that's what the breed brochure says.
That's what they're selling, man. They sell a lot of horses that you just get on and go and throw your legs forward and lay back in a lounge chair.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Chances are you'll unsound your horse doing that, and you'll probably take out your hip sockets in your back too doing that as you age.
Yes, absolutely. So I started years ago. I started a filly. I believe she was a Rocky Mountain horse at an expo in Pennsylvania. It was a colt starting deal I was doing, and I was told by a member of the audience, and I didn't remember this, but I was told later by someone who was there in the audience. I was told by this member of the audience that I was riding this filly wrong for her first ride, that I had to lean back and throw my legs forward. And now they told me that what I said on the microphone in front of a pretty large crowd was, "That sounds like the dumbest thing I've ever heard." I can't imagine that I would have said something like that, you know. But it was actually when they reminded me of it, I said, "And here's why it's not right." I put myself in that position and she fell to the ground. I remember that part. She fell to the ground, and it was because she was very slight and she was not very strong, and it was a situation where it was kind of not the best situation. She was a little weak, and so I was really trying to be delicate with starting her anyway. And you know, this was years ago, and I was kind of, I guess, trying to make a point about how there's really no reason to be doing that structurally for any horse, particularly on the first ride, you know. So anyway, sorry, I'll let you get back to that. So how does this take place? I believe I remember you telling me years ago that it had something to do with the alignment of the tuber coccyx and the tuberous sacral in the pelvis. Is that right? Is something in the alignment there?
It's a lot more. It's not more complicated. Actually, it's easier than that.
Oh, good.
Okay, because the gait also. Let's talk about the first place. Now, you mentioned one thing with that filly. First of all, maturity.
Yeah.
Physical maturity. Okay, and then the other part is conditioning, which takes time. And you know you can't get any horse in peak conditioning or strength until after the age of 5. The taller the horse, the later that happens. Mm-hmm. So they have to have strength. But the other part is you can force a horse into gait through emotions. So let's talk about horse training, and especially gaited horses, because there's some elements here that are really important. And it's really easy to cram and jam a horse, but don't usually get a stepping pace, right? Okay. But 50% of your training on a gaited horse is psychological.
Yeah.
Okay? It's that on any horse, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's psychological. And so some really important things with the Tennessee walking horse and the foxtrotter, they have these elements of looseness, relaxation. If they are not relaxed mentally, you are going to have tension. And when you have tension, you cannot, then you're going to, a lot of times that tension is going to go at that cranium and C1, C1 cervical. Mm-hmm. And when it locks in tension, you are not going to be able to govern the rest of that horse's back all the way to the pelvis.
Right.
In a softness and a loose way. Okay, now you can cram and jam and get a stepping pace and maybe a saddle rack, and that's why so many people like those gaits, because they're easy.
Gotcha.
But they're not good for the horse either if they're done incorrectly. So how it happens has to do a whole lot through training, because just because a horse gaits strongly in a field does not mean it will gait when you get on its back. As soon as you put headgear on it, you strap a saddle on it, you change the emotions in it, and how you sit and interfere is going to interfere with whether that horse gaits or not, or gaits well or not.
Right. We change a lot when we start to confine the supraspinous ligament and the back muscles, and then we add the weight. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't know how to go into weight-bearing posture. They don't know how to come up beforehand.
Right.
That's part of our job, is to teach them their anatomy, because they don't know. They live with a sternum, but they don't know they have one, that they should lift it to help lift up through the withers and get that C6 and C7 to a neutral position, to get them off the forehand to engage the hindquarters as much as possible. That hindquarter is your engine, that's your motor.
Exactly.
But if you're sitting incorrectly, like feet on the dashboard and back, what are you doing to the longissimus muscles that run down each side? You're putting a crimp in the fuel line, and that's your fuel line to the hindquarters.
I really like that analogy.
Make everything as simple so the general public can understand it.
I'm writing that one down. You put a crimp in the fuel line. I'm going to totally use that, and I'm going to credit you every time I do.
I mean, it just you have to speak in terms that Dr. Barb and I, my chiropractic that I work with here, we never talk about your audience. Try to talk in terms that they can understand and relate to.
Sure, absolutely.
Otherwise, you're dead in the water again.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So then, when we're talking about some of these horses that are gaiting, I've seen. So you mentioned the Arabs that would gait. I've seen through tension. Probably every breed end up in some form of gait, some form of paciness, and we see a lot in our. I'm primarily involved in the dressage horse world. We see a lot of our dressage horses with walks that are ruined. We would call them ruined by poor riding and overholding and tension coming through the back. They end up with lateral walks. So
lateral walk.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of times if you look at the head too, you're seeing a lot of roll curve. But you're also seeing a lot of roll curve in Tennessee walking horse, in every gaited breed, because people are riding their hands first. And one of the worst things on a gaited horse is your hands are a secondary aid. It's what you do with that, keeping that horse's emotions right, and then through your feet and legs, and keeping it soft and keeping that back open and in a position, getting to the strongest part of the horse's back, which is the base of the wither.
Yes.
So you don't interfere with the hindquarters, and that they can learn to go in. They have to learn how to carry your weight. And even every spring, when your horse, I don't care if your horse is 15 years old or 20 years old, every spring if it's been sitting in the winter, which a lot of people do here in Minnesota. I don't, but they do. And every spring, people will get that horse up just like last fall and go on a trail ride, and go on a 4-hour trail ride. That horse has not had its back conditioned again to carry weight. That conditioning element, it may have been trained to, but it's still not there. It has to get conditioned. Just like the mouth has to get reconditioned every spring to packing the bit. It knows, because it hasn't been. Same with packing a saddle. It hasn't been. So otherwise their backs get sore. So there's a lot of things that people need to think a little bit more that they just don't know anymore. And so that's our job, is to teach them, take the time, reestablish the relationship in the spring. Make sure the emotions, get them suppling, do your stretching before you get on, do your nice quiet groundwork to teach them straightness again from the ground, and then start riding them slowly, 5-10 minutes, a few times a week, and build it up, because it takes 9 to 12 weeks to get up with a mature horse, to get a horse at peak condition. That's riding 4 to 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And people aren't putting that time in.
Right. Well, and that's where, just as you mentioned earlier, that's a horsemanship problem, not a gating problem or anything like that.
But it becomes a gating problem
Mm-hmm.
because of the horsemanship problem.
Right. Right.
And so then so often it's so much easier for everybody to just tighten up and cram that horse because they're having a good time with their friends.
Yeah.
And they forget the horse that's carrying them.
Right. Exactly. Now, you mentioned when you first started becoming introduced to the Tennessee walking horses and that sort of thing, that you noticed there were a lot of issues holding the gaited horses back early on. Is that kind of what you're talking about, the horsemanship problems?
Exactly. The horsemanship problem. It was purely a horsemanship problem. At least for me, because I was working with naturally gaited horses. That's all I've ever done. But
Okay.
what happened was the show horse world was influencing every facet of the gaited horse community because people copy what they see in the show ring.
Yes. Right. Well, if it's getting a ribbon, it must be the right thing.
It must, yeah, if it's a world champion, it must be the right thing.
Yeah.
Where there was no individualism. But, you know, that's the same with other breeds that are non-gated too. Is everybody tries to do what we call cookie cutter training. This
Yeah.
is just what you do with a gated horse.
Yeah.
This is the angle that they're holding. All gated horses must have that angle on their front and that angle on their back.
Right.
And every gated horse is different. Every gated horse is an individual, even within the same breed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where having a better knowledge base of looking at conformation and on these horses and how to shape them properly. Headset has always been a bad word for me.
Yes.
Because everybody tried to put them in a headset. There should be no such thing as a headset. Know your horse's conformation, especially on all these different gated horse breeds.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different structures. And let the horse help you if you educate it properly and keep the emotions okay. Let the horse tell you where it's comfortable in carrying its head.
Yes.
Don't demand. And that's because you're going to end up in a stepping pace.
So tell me about a stepping pace. What is the movement of that? We keep coming back to that.
Oh, yeah. These guys are the majority of the industry today.
Oh, okay.
Even in foxtrotters.
Okay.
I'm running into some foxtrotter trainers, people that have sent horses, foxtrotters to trainers, and they got these horses going lateral, and I'm going, no. The foxtrot is a diagonally influenced gait. Lateral does not figure into this. Why are you working on the pace to create foxtrot? So the stepping pace is a gait that it's a broken 4-beat gait. It's not an even 4-beat gait. Your running walk is an even 4-beat gait. Your foxtrot is a broken 4-beat gait. Your stepping pace is a broken 4-beat gait. So the stepping pace, the legs pick up laterally or closely laterally together.
Okay.
And then they start down laterally together. But what happens is the hind foot sets down prior to the fore on the same side. And there is tension in the top line of that. So what happens when you get a stepping pace or even a true pace is you get a tightening of one side of the back, and then it switches to the other side of the back. The back is not lifting as a whole at one time.
Okay.
It's just switching. And when this happens, then a lot of the horse's weight goes to the shoulders and the hip on the same side. Then it switches. Then the abdominal, the gut load sways from the thoracic, the same weight, side to side. It is very hard on a horse's body. But granted, we can have stepping pace horses that's just what their conformation is bred to do. Okay? And some of them can be really smooth, and the really smooth ones we kind of term a slick pace. But then there are stepping paces that are very uncomfortable. It depends on the conformation you're looking at within the horse.
Okay. So I'm trying to picture in my head how this is going to feel. So then, if I'm riding a horse that's going in a stepping pace, I'm going to feel then more
side to side
and a pause, right? Almost like a penguin kind of waddling side to side in a.
Great
Oh.
From small amounts to bigger amounts depending on the horse.
Okay.
Now, if you go into pure hard pace, it's going to feel like your internal organs are being rearranged.
Yeah, yes. It's, as my grandmother used to say, it's enough to jar your preserves.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The only pace that is smooth, and it's not completely smooth, it has some bumpiness to it because it does have a moment of suspension to it, but it's so fast, and that's the cool flying pace of the Icelandic horse.
Oh, okay.
If you ride a flying pace on an Icelandic horse, and like I said, there's a little bit of bumpiness, vibration that happens that you'll feel because of that moment of suspension, but it's so minimal because the horse is going so fast.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that is a gait of that breed that naturally, not in all individuals. I just sent one home that was a flying pace horse. And oh my gosh, it's a thrill. You want to put on a set of goggles and scarf.
Oh, that's cool. I'm getting a picture in my mind right now of Snoopy as the Red Baron riding an Icelandic. That's perfect. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm back to riding my horse in the stepping pace, right? And I'm feeling what's feeling to me 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that right? So it's
That's right.
hind and front, laterally, right? So left, right, left, right.
Yes.
Okay. How is that different from the running walk?
Okay. The running walk is actually just like a walk of any other horse, except they go up a gear in energy. They extend, the hindquarters get deeper. They bring in the front legs, but every leg is still picking up separately and setting down separately. All the legs work independently of each other in timing.
Okay. And so then we would have a more continuous tempo within that. Instead of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So now I'm starting to picture some of the horses that I've ridden in the past that have had stepping paces versus running walks. And I've always joked that I can feel what the feet are doing, but I couldn't tell you what it's called.
Right.
So
terminology, there's a whole new lingo in the gaited horse world.
Yeah.
But let's talk about another gait, because we talk about the Rocky.
Okay. Yes.
And we also want to talk about the saddle polt, which is same thing as a saddle rack and a Rocky. Corto Largo, the Pasofino, which is another version of saddle rack. So visualize this in that the legs pick up closely laterally together on one side.
Okay.
But when they come down independently. So it's an even 4-beat gait.
Oh. That's the saddle rack?
That's the saddle rack. That's the signature gait of your Rocky Mountain horse. At your Corto, your Largo, you'll have a little bit different visual because of conformation. But it has the same movements. But like a Fino horse and a Pasofino, they have a shorter step.
Yes.
But a Largo horse in a Pasofino has more extension. A Corto horse in a Pasofino doesn't have quite the extension of the Largo horse, but it has more than the Fino horse.
Okay.
Even speed.
Okay, interesting.
And there has to be what we call in these gaits, in your saddle racking gaits, what we call an essential tension. You know, there's not that looseness, head shake, and head movement you have in the foxtrot and the running walk. But there's an essential tension, but here is a really important part to know about these gaits. A horse really well trained and self-caring in the gait, and self-caring because of conditioning and good education, their back should still be in what we call a level posture or neutral.
And that's within the essential tension.
Yeah, and it's because if they go hollow and now the horse is getting braced, we don't have a quality gait, the horse is going to start getting fatigued. You're going to start stressing and straining other parts of the body. You're going to start seeing hunter's bumps come into the LS joint. Those things start happening. So that's not quality. That's a horsemanship problem.
Yes. Okay. And so the essential tension then is the lateral contraction then of the longissimus muscle, am I right?
Yes.
That allows the lifting together, but then would relax for the separated impact phase. Okay.
Yes, you got it.
I'm going to figure this stuff out. Come hell or high water, I'm going to figure this stuff out, Liz.
It is easy. It's just you have to put forth the effort to care enough to learn them, and then it becomes easy.
Yes.
You know, one of the hardest things I talk about in learning gait is learning to see it is the easiest part. Once you know the elements, okay. Of each gait. Learning to feel it is actually the next easiest. Learning to hear it is the hardest.
Okay.
So often people hear 4 beats, but they can't catch between a broken and an even.
Gotcha.
That's what takes the time, and it's really wonderful when you have a good arena where you could just close your eyes. I always say close your eyes to learn to hear the gait.
Well, and you'd have to be able to pick up on the sound of the front versus the hind also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the same in judging sound for soundness too. In a horse that's not moving sound around here, we try to do a lot of listening to seeing to hear if a horse is moving soundly or not.
Gotcha.
You can hear it in football.
Yes, exactly. That's something I coach all the time with my riders. I tell them, look, can you hear that left front foot is carrying a little more weight than the right front foot is, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And they have to kind of learn also to visualize how the legs move. Close their eyes and visualize how a hind leg picks up and rolls through forward and sits down in a support base sequence.
Right.
You can visualize that between the front, and that's an old cavalry exercise. To do that, they were all taught to do that, U.S. cavalry.
Right.
Then you start getting feel.
Yeah.
But on a gaited horse, it's really important to, in naturally gaited horse training anyway, don't override them and stay out of their face. Really work so much through your core, your intent. Because if you start getting into the headgear, you're going to start messing with the gait, and you're going to start interfering with the horse finding it.
Gotcha. Yeah, of course. Of course, because any action that we put on the bridle is going to be reflected in the haunches.
Immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
Immediately. So you've got to be really, really careful and really, really conscious of what you're asking that horse to do. And any horse, you do not want to lock that cranium in C1 or you are dead in the water. Right.
Absolutely. Okay, so
I call that the master lock. You have to keep the cranium C1 is the master lock, and you have to keep that unlocked, or you're going to lock every other joint throughout the body or create tension in it.
Yep.
Through the rest of the lock.
Yep, that makes so much sense, the master lock. I love that. And it's funny because I talk to my students quite a bit about how the occiput and the hyoid apparatus are the key to the rest of the body. So it's awesome to hear you say that that's the master lock. So.
Yeah, because if they're hyoid, and I can't tell you how many horses come in here. We're constantly dealing with hyoid problems. I mean, a pullback on a halter can displace your hyoid.
Yep.
And anytime you have a hyoid issue, and it's so fragile and it's so complicated, and the tongue sits in it, and it attaches to your TMJ.
Exactly.
And so any tension you have in your TMJ, be it hyoid or whatever, or you could tension in TMJ because you got cervicals that are displaced.
Right.
Then you're going to, that horse cannot give you its full mind. It's going to protect its head.
Sure, of course. Self-preservation.
To keep So, and the other thing is, if a hyoid problem, a TMJ problem, an emotional problem, they're going to clench their jaw.
Yes.
And they're going to have a tight jaw, so they're not going to be able to pick a bit up properly and pack it, and they're not going to keep that loose jaw. So if you wanted to do something like cranial rotation, head twirling, I think that's what Dr. Deb calls it, head twirling, where the jaws relax and released, and even doing it in your groundwork, because we do it we start that in our groundwork here, head twirling. You're still dead. You're dead in the water because you're not going to get the whole horse.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's just less is more. Less is more. Stop and be a listener. Don't assume or take anything personal that a horse is doing. Always sit back and ask why, and then go to the body and ask, how is the horse reacting to what am I doing?
Yeah.
So what do I change?
Right.
What do I need to change? Not what the horse needs to change. What do I need to change?
Yep, absolutely.
And this emotional thing in gaits with gaited horses, if their head is not okay and they don't trust you, or they sense your fear, or they may not trust you because you have fear, or they don't trust you because you're aggressive, you're going to affect the emotional element, and you're not going to get good gaits.
Right. And now I see a lot of times with the gaited horses, and now granted, I see this with every horse, so it's not just a gaited horse challenge, but I see it expressed quite a bit in the gaited horses, that when the emotions come up, they go ventrally flexed, right? The back drops, the neck comes up, and it's almost like an avalanche kind of rolling downhill to try to catch themselves, but then they can't catch themselves because they're rolling downhill, you know?
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's where you'll often see when that starts happening. I know a lot of gaited horse people know this. When that happens and it starts rolling backwards, they'll start buckling those hind legs.
Yes.
So they'll actually collapse in a hind leg.
Yes.
Or they'll start stumbling on a foot.
Right.
That happens a lot because people aren't keeping them in straightness. You know, they don't have them in perpendicular to the ground. So yeah, we get in the way a lot. I mean, if we just help support, guide, and direct, and not control, things would come so much faster for these horses, so much sooner.
Yeah. And a big part of it comes down to the emotions.
Oh.
You know, because and with your gaits,
Also part is if I get a rehab, because I get a lot of rehab horses here.
Okay.
And sometimes it's way more than 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to spend so much time on getting the emotions and the trust and getting the defenses to go away, that they believe in me, that I'm not going to hurt them. I'm going to help them. I'm going to guide them. I'm going to give them consistent rules and boundaries that are reasonable for them.
Yeah.
For them that they can understand.
On an individual basis.
Not for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. That's so true. Yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot about, you know, the tempo with the gaited horses, and I always refer to the tempo as an emotional condition of the gait.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So that makes perfect sense that you're dealing with at least 50% of that being emotional. I know we deal with that with, you know, our trail horses that are problematic, our dressage horses. Gosh, I deal with that. That might be closer to 75% emotions that we deal with there. So I totally get that.
Just get people back to the classical philosophies of the great masters.
Yeah, right.
Because they believed in that emotional training of the really good ones was paramount. They knew that, and those emotions they took good care of. Yes. They did not violate that horse's emotions.
Right. Well, you know, that takes me, that's a perfect little segue to one of the things I warned you that I was going to be talking about, or that I was going to bring up. And that was one of the first clinics that I attended with you. I've got to see if I can find it on an old calendar, but I'm guessing that it was at least 15 years ago now. You gave a lecture. And I remember sitting down with a notebook, and I have continued to be the nerd with a notebook at every clinic that I go to. But And so I blame it on you, actually, because your lecture really fueled me thinking, and I think so much about the footfall and the timing and the gaits and things like that of all the horses, gated or non-gated. And I will admit that you had a large influence on that. So you made a comment that stuck with me all of these years and has been a huge, huge influence on me. And it was during a lecture where you were just talking about horsemanship. You were just talking about things, and you had so many quotes that you were putting out there. And one that I remember that has stuck with me all this time is, horsemanship is a place of being before a means of doing.
Yes. Yes.
I can tell you exactly where I was sitting when you said that. I mean, it was raining. We were in Ford City, Pennsylvania at the Crooked Creek Horse Park.
Yeah.
It was raining, and so we were in the little tiny indoor that they had there.
It's a long one. Yeah.
Yes, tiny and long. And I remember we were doing the lecture just off of the middle doorway. I can picture the moment exactly when you said that. It had that much of an impact on me. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And for anybody who's out there listening, I'm going to repeat that because it was to me, so meaningful. Liz's quote was, horsemanship is a place of being before a means of doing.
Yeah, I have that quote at one end of my indoor. I have a classical indoor here. At one end on a big sign. So hopefully everybody that walks out of the office into the arena sees that and they think about it.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that place of being has to be a place of being content when you're around a horse.
Mm-hmm.
Of being able to clear your mind and be a listener of the horse and walk into a horse's space with no judgment, no negative energy, just being comfortable in your own skin, projecting nothing, and letting that horse, and I'm not saying push into your space, but investigate your space and your energy, your bubble. Because I find if we put defenses, like if we walk up to a horse with stiff knees, where I always say, introduce yourself with soft, open joints, and with soft shoulders. Don't project tension, because the horse reads body language. That's how they communicate with
That's
you.
all they have to go by. Yeah.
That's all they have to go by. So what is my body language? So I have to be very conscious of my body language and have to really clear out who I am inside and be really comfortable to let that horse look deeply to me and investigate me. I have some horses that lift their nose, their muzzle, and they lift their head and they look right down into my eyes, especially a lot of these rehab horses.
Yes.
And then learn, just be. Don't move, don't react. They're not showing aggression. They just want to know how comfortable you are. Because if you are comfortable, then you're going to give them comfort.
Right.
If you are defensive, or you are controlling, or you are arrogant, that horse is going to know it right off, and that door is going to close. And so that horse is going to hold back something. You might get something done, but you won't get 100% of that horse. And so part of being is being comfortable in who you are, being okay with your faults, working on your positives, and kind of saying that to the horse. Look, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to be here and I'm going to help you through that. We're traveling the same journey together, just at different times, because that's my goal as a teacher, to help them get through their troubles as we learn how to get through ours. And so that's kind of a brief on what it is, but you just have to be okay. You have to find that internal peace And I do so much stuff. I mean, I sit here in the office and that, and I'm answering questions and phone calls constantly all the time, and I lose that internal peace. Because I'm busy, I have these things to do.
Right.
But when I walk down into the barn, and every morning, I mean, one of the greatest things for me is to walk out in the morning, they hear this door open up at the house, all the way up here, they can hear it. And everybody talks to me. Everybody says, every horse goes, good morning. And I can hear it. I know all their voices.
Yes.
And as you walk into the barn, it's peaceful. They're comfortable. I know I'm doing my job in making their environment for them safe. So I know I've already started the day off right for them because they already know they're safe.
Yes.
And so when I go to work with that horse and walk into a space, it already knows it's safe. And it's my job with the troubled ones to get them there. Although I have to give my personal horses some credit here, because my personal horses are so zen and so used to troubled horses coming in here that you can almost see the energy of them saying, oh, it's okay, just hang out,
Yeah, they become little diffusers. Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely become diffusers. So they get kind of the credit because they are just being in their comfort as well to help the other horses that come here.
Yeah.
So, and as soon as I walk into a space of a horse, I make it, really, I got to do this, I got to do that. So I walk into the barn and then working with horses, it's like the world melts. The world gets soft. The world gets quiet. And it's like everything else is melted away, but me and that horse I'm with at that moment, and can get so zoned into that place that I can't hear anything, I don't see anything, just me and that horse. And the thing is having a good training environment that you can create that too.
Yes.
Because, if it's insanity around you, it's not going to happen.
Right. No matter how hard you try. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter how hard you say, I try. There's one thing I talk about often is there are a lot of people places with horses for the most part. You have to find the horse places with people.
Wow, yeah, that is so true. That's meaningful.
That kind of environment. And it takes that internal energy of a person to help that be for the horses.
Yeah.
They're being inundated day in and day out with traffic sounds, with air sounds above them, with all kinds of energies and influences going on. We've got to help them feel safe and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Not safe. You have to learn how to tolerate that.
Right.
Not the way to approach it. Let them look to you to help soften them and diffuse all the external elements that create stress in their life.
Okay, so I'm going to dig a little bit deeper with this. And I love how you went with this, and it's become, since you said that, and obviously this decade and a half later, that stuck with me. If I knew it word for word from the way that you have it printed in your arena, that's awesome. One day I'm going to come out and visit with you and get a picture next to that sign.
I've invited you. The door's open.
I can't wait, honestly.
We have guest rooms.
Perfect. I'm going to find an excuse to come through that way for sure. So we're talking about getting ourselves in that place. And this is regardless of gated or non-gated, right? This is horses. This is llamas, right? This is camels. This is, I've worked with grizzly bears and lions and alligators and dogs and, all of these things. This is when you're in an educational setting with any of these animals, with any of these people even, honestly, that pick up on our energies. So how do we get there? How do we go to this place of being before the means of doing?
In a public event, it's very difficult. But, one of the things that happens to me often, and I don't know if we have any of these people listening, but it happens often when I go and do a clinic. And maybe you have seen it too when I get a troubled horse in a clinic setting, and you can tell the riders are nervous, which is normal at a clinic. We expect that, and so we try to diffuse that if we can, as quickly as we can, but we're not always successful because we don't know the history on all the people, too, that come to our clinics and what they're bringing beside and have projected into the horse. But it's so often, for me, I know these troubled horses, that I have to let them know I'm not going to be another human at these clinics.
Yeah.
That's just going to come in and take over their space.
Yeah.
And try to teach for the people.
Yes.
Teach for the horse. So you've seen me for years. I've used lavender.
Yes, exactly. That's so funny because I was thinking of that when we went into this broadcast. I was the memory of you having it on your wrists. Yeah.
All the time. We live with lavender here because I rely on the smell sense of a horse. So before I go into their space, I want them to smell that. Something different, something pleasant, something that they're going to take up into their sinuses and release some endorphins to help them relax. And I'm not going to go and take the lead and rip them around. I'm going to touch them on the neck, and I'm going to let them feel my heartbeat through my hand. Mm-hmm. So they understand that I'm calm. And I stroke. I don't pat. I'm not a patter of horses. Stroke mm-hmm. that horse. And so many times the horses are so taken back by me asking permission to come into their space. Doing an introduction, because that's an introduction I'm doing.
Right.
And then getting permission, hoping I'm getting permission if they're okay with me coming into their space. And then reinforce it with that soft knees, not a projecting harshness in my structure, but a soft one, and an inviting one. I want to invite them. And so many times, thousands of times now, some of these horses will just look at you and they'll turn their head at you, and sometimes they'll take their head up and down. Some of them are like, oh my God, thank you. You're here to help me. That's the feeling that goes into your head.
Sometimes as if in disbelief.
Yeah, it's like somebody's listening to me.
Yeah.
This person cares about my emotions, my body. It's not trying to own my body. It's asking if they can touch my body and help me show me how to use my body in a comfortable, pleasant way. It's very hard, but it's in a teaching thing, but it's been wonderful to be able to do that, actually.
Yeah.
And boy, it took me a long time to get there. Because you think as a young and up-and-coming clinician, because I can remember when this clinic thing just started, so long ago, and you had to prove yourself because mm-hmm. nobody's going to come to the clinics.
Yes, right.
And so you get in that place of, well, here I have to prove myself because, I can't do anything and I can't make this horse do anything. I'm done. I'm dead in the water. Mm-hmm. And we've had eras through our culture where people wanted to see that ego, kind of how you conquer a horse and control a horse.
Yeah.
But the cool thing that I found is our population in the horse industry has aged. It's not young people anymore. And it's older people, and they want to be safe.
Yes.
And I found when that kind of element started coming to the clinics more, I got to teach the way I wanted to teach.
Yeah. No rushing, and no hurrying.
What I could do, what I did at home, I could take into the clinic arena. Where at one time, if you did that, you were done.
Right.
So it's been a really fun evolution to see this change. Granted, our population in the horse industry of people has dropped and is continuing to drop. Mm-hmm. But the quality of people that are still in horses really care about horses.
Yes.
It's not so much a status symbol or a thing that you just did, on your past time.
Right.
People really care about these horses. They really matter to them, and they want to be safe, and they want to know. So show them how to make the horse safe, help them get through some of their fears, because fear is a very consuming thing, although we must have it for self-preservation, just like the horse.
Right. Survival.
Survival. So you have to be able to find your internal zen at a clinic. You have to find that a place of just being. And, you know, a horse will help you quicker there by a horse responding to how I approach them than the people will.
Yes.
People will give me, oh, but this horse did this and this horse did that, and then blah, 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 you know, and they're bringing other stuff in.
Right.
And you put your hand on this horse and you look in this horse's eye and it looks back at you and it gives you soft and the head drops and you're going, okay, now come look at your horse.
Yep.
Did you just see, while you were talking, did you just see what happened to your horse?
Right.
This is what I want you to do, and I'm going to help you do it.
Yep, absolutely. But they had that story in their mind of what was taking place.
And it was a lot of times it's their interpretation. It's not what it is for the horse at all.
Exactly. Yeah, that is so true. And I find that with nearly every problem horse, so-called problem horse, that comes into clinics. It's simply a misunderstanding, you know?
It's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And how hard, it can be so hard because you're talking two completely different species.
Sure.
And I always tell people, don't humanize your horse and your horse won't horselize you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we talk about that miscommunication and that misunderstanding, it can be misunderstanding after misunderstanding after misunderstanding. I mean, if these horses have gone through multiple trainers and multiple owners and, you know, multiple clinics and things like that.
And the tack's always changing. The equipment, the rules are always changing. They're so confused and they're so traumatized.
Absolutely. And so for them, it makes perfect sense to be defensive because they've been given every reason to be so.
They have every right. That's why I always say, don't take anything personally that a horse does.
Yep.
I never do.
Yep. Absolutely. I always make the joke to my students that they need to be heartless in their training. And I say that because it kind of jogs their thinking. And what I mean by that is they need to keep their emotions the heck out of there.
Get their emotions out of there. Just go, like, you know, there's something I do I get some really scary horses in here sometimes. I mean, some really serious horses.
I'm sure.
That are on the edge of going over and never being able to come, what I call never coming back. They're done. They're never, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And so there's something where I'll take my hand on the front of their face after I've done some introduction to the body and that. But then once they're trusting me, especially horses that have head issues, because so many do, because people have been in their faces with halters and bridles and that. And I will take my hand in my palm and I'll put it right on the center of the forehead and not wiggle a finger, but just not push, but just lay it there.
Just be there. Yep.
Just be there but the secret to that is don't think. Don't expect anything. Don't ask anything.
Like a meditative moment.
Like a meditative moment. And just let that hand there and let that horse feel that hand of soft with nothing else projecting in your mind. And it is very hard for people to not have something in their head all the time.
Yes, it is.
Do I have to go shampoo my carpet? Do I have to be out of here at a certain time?
Right.
And you know, and you watch these horses when you do that and you do it right, they just melt.
Yes.
And they go soft and the head comes down and the eyes start blinking and then they start closing.
Yes.
And they just get in this just being place of their own.
Right. They go into that place of being.
Yeah, they go into that place of being with you because you're making a connection of just being together.
Yes. You know, this reminds me of something that a friend of mine who is a surgeon, and he studied Eastern medicine as well as Western medicine. Really awesome guy to chat with. But he said to me one day, I used to teach a lot of clinics at his place, and he said, you know, we're called the human being, not the human doing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
I thought you would. And that's
awesome.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that just really stuck with me. You know, I thought, yeah. Just be there.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Wow. Gosh. Oh my goodness. We could talk about stuff like this, I think, all night long.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. I can't wait. I'm going to definitely make some time to come out and visit with you, Liz. And I know you have invited me. You've invited me so many times through the years, and I've never made that opportunity come through. I'm going to definitely have to make sure that I do that.
Good.
So,
Well, we look forward to it.
oh, thank you. So do I. So,
And I can even cook.
oh, awesome. Awesome. That's fantastic.
That's how I relax. I come in and cook at night.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things to do also. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So and you can tell me no if you want to do this, but talk to me a little bit about Lee Ziegler. I know I saw on your Facebook posts recently that you've been going through some totes, going through a lot of stuff of Lee's.
Yeah, when Lee passed, she left me all of her writings, but I have most of it. When I started going through this, this has been sitting in boxes for over 10 years in my basement. I didn't open any of it.
Wow.
It was just too painful.
Yes. So for our listeners, tell us who Lee Ziegler was.
Lee Ziegler was a very world-renowned gaited horse educator. She wasn't a trainer, and there's a reason why, and a lot of people don't know this whole history on Lee, but she studied, her father was U.S. Cavalry while my grandfather was U.S. Cavalry, and they both went Air Force together. And so when Lee went to college, she also went to Europe, and so while she was studying in Europe, she also studied with some great masters over there, but she rode Arabians, warm bloods, and when she came back to the States, she married really quickly right after she married. She and her mother were in California, and her mother had a serious car accident, and Lee's pelvis was completely crushed. And so they had to rebuild her pelvis, and so she was never able to ride a trotting horse again. But her father had a ranch, and he was a foxtrotter man. And so she went to the foxtrotters because she could ride foxtrotters, but she still couldn't train to help Lee get on a horse. She lived a lot of her life in a lot of pain because of that crushed pelvis. And so when Lee get her, she'd have to have a mounting block, and she'd have to get on the off side of the horse and then have to lift her left leg over the back of the saddle to get on. So she wasn't able to train, but she was a phenomenal teacher, especially since she had studied with some really great people in Europe. And she was highly educated, so she was a fabulous writer too, and she had that really good trainers and people that analyze and are fine mechanics and locomotion confirmation, and what we call a really good 3D visual naturally.
Okay.
So she had that as well. And so she went to foxtrotters and then got very involved in the gaited horses as her father was. And so when she passed, I didn't know this, it's been sitting in my basement for 10 years. The colonel sent me all of his writings, and he was a vast writer and correspondence. I have correspondence here from all over the world, from Texas A&M and Kentucky Research, and people from all over the world on gaits and biomechanics and locomotion and all these studies. I mean, it's all sitting here in my office on a table.
Wow. Well, I remember reading your post about that. That's fantastic. Yeah. Now, how long ago were those correspondences?
Oh my gosh, they probably these are going back to the 1960s.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, with old world-renowned people that nobody knows anymore. And there's tons even here on the gaited Arabians.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
I mean, there's so much here, and on the genetics and of gaited horses and the gaits of gaited horses. I'm sitting here with a museum around me of, I can't believe what I've got sitting here. And,
wow.
And so I'm right now, it's on my table because I'm going through sorting and cataloging everything. And so I have most of Lee's work here. I haven't found anything new that I didn't already have. But what her father sent is amazing. And I only have one of Lee's books, but her father had quite a huge library. But when Lee passed, her father, Colonel Bradbury, put his books with her books, because she and I, when I would go out there, we'd sit and dig in all of her books, because she's like me. She had a huge equine library like I do, and I have one cavalry book she actually gave me on one of my trips out there. I still have, but so he donated. So I didn't get any of his books, because he's got a lot of books that he refers to, of things that he quotes out of books out of his library in his correspondences. But he donated his books, equine books, not his Air Force books, his equine books, with Lee's, and they're at the Kentucky Horse Park.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They were all donated to the Kentucky Horse Park. And so a lot of people, and there was some confusion, but when Lee got sick, a lot of people were supposed to, thought the first 2 weeks they had diagnosed her with Lou Gehrig's, because it mimicked Lou Gehrig's. And that is not what she passed from. It turned out that she had Lyme's, and she had probably had Lyme's disease for many, many years.
No kidding.
Because when she and I, and it got so when she and I, we judged and did clinics a lot together, and it'd be she could only do a couple a year, because it'd take her 2 months to heal. She'd be so sick. She'd be so ill. And that turned out it was the Lyme that was making her so ill in so many ways, on top of having a lot of physical pain as she aged from the crushed pelvis.
Sure.
But one of the things that she wrote, Stocksy, and she wrote a saddle I could not ride. I wrote it, and I felt like I just gave birth to triplets. Because of her broken pelvis, she had to have a very, very wide saddle in the front. So she rode an old Phallus.
Oh, okay. The old Monty Foreman saddles.
Yeah. But it was so wide in front. And all my saddles, the ground seat has to be carved out very narrow in front. Because my seat bones are so close together, I didn't have a crushed pelvis.
Right.
And then she rode an Albion. Dressage saddle, and then her passion was side saddle, like mine as well. We
really?
Our side saddle, and so that was what she rode. And the side saddle actually created the least amount of pain for her. Now, if I ride side saddle, 5 minutes I'm hurting, because I jumped in it, I did reining in it, and I beat up my body doing side saddle.
Yeah.
So it's not really a healthy seat to ride.
Right. Exactly.
Very hard on the body. So she actually passed with Lyme's, and so that's kind of it. I mean, she was a very dear friend. We were both very brought up in very military kind of environments, with my grandfather and her father, and my mother being a child raised up on the military bases. So, and back then, Lee was very direct. Oh, boy, was she honest, wonderfully honest. But everybody was back then.
Yeah.
It was, who I really enjoy a lot listening to, that reminds me of how Lee and I were brought up and taught, was George Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you didn't question. You just listened and you did.
Right.
And so that's how we were brought up. Now I have learned, and I used to be firm like that too, but now times have changed. The culture has changed. So as a teacher, I've had to find a softer way.
Yes, it's really easy to scare people away with
especially if you're a confident
bluntness.
Person, which I tend to be pretty confident. If you know your art, you're very confident.
Yes.
If you put me in front of a table full of counting books, I'd have been nervous wreck, and I'd be very insecure and terrified.
Right.
So, so it's, but I, at times, and she and I would spar over things. Oh my gosh. And then back in those days, a phone call was 7 cents a minute, long distance.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we had to do we would write or type, if anybody remembers what a typewriter is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We would type letters back and forth, and once in a while we'd big long distance phone call. And we spar in discussion, and we had so much fun because, you know, you can sit and you can spar and discuss and try to push your point home on that other person, but it doesn't mean they have to take it. And that's the way we were. And so we really enjoyed that with each other. You know, where other people, they'd get all offended and all that. I was like,
Right.
And we'd type letters back and forth to each other, making our point.
That's fantastic. Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
I love that. But you're so right, because it's so easy. And I don't know so much if it's that's become the times, or that we've become so much more well connected to each other that we're just noticing it more.
You know,
but it's easy to upset people. I hadn't thought about that,
but you just hit a very good point.
Yeah, there's so many people. We're just, you know, we can touch potentially several thousand people in a single day because of the way we're connected. You know, it kind of reminds me of something somebody said to me the other day. They said, you know, there's not excuse my French with this, but they said there's not an overabundance of assholes in the world. They're just strategically placed so that you meet at least one every day.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
But I think that too a lot about people that are very easily offended. It's not so much that there's more of them potentially. Maybe there are, I don't know. But you know, people are so much more accessible, you know, and we talk about all the bad things that happen in the world and how they never happened 50 years ago. Well, you know what? 50 years ago, we didn't know what happened in the next town until 2 weeks later.
That's true.
You know?
That is so true. And the other thing is how we communicate, because rather than looking each other in the face, too.
Yeah.
So much we are corresponding quickly, instantly, shortly.
Yes.
Via computer.
Yes, exactly.
Or phone.
Exactly.
And so many times an emotion or a meaning can be misinterpreted. Now, sometimes there's no you know, some people are really good at typing a whole lot that you get what they're saying.
Right.
But I think we miss a lot of the true feel. We don't get the true feel of each other. Like when you're one-on-one with a horse, it's right there in front of you.
Yes, exactly.
Right now.
Exactly.
Right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much about that, and that can be that right now reel from the horse can be challenging for the person. You know, to have to face our own garbage sometimes. You know,
well, that's what helps you get to that place of being.
Exactly.
You gotta face your own garbage. You gotta get through it. You gotta be honest with yourself.
Yes.
Because if you're dishonest to yourself, then you're lying to everybody else.
That's right. And
you're lying to the horse.
Yes. And there's so much about it that, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think to be a horse person, you have to be type A. Right? You have to kind of be that person who wants to get something done, who wants to take a little bit of charge. I mean, think about it. Horse ownership, you're trying to control the entire existence of another living being. That's like type A squared. But in order to feel comfortable, in order to feel confident, in order to learn at their maximum capacity, the horse needs us to almost be the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, they do.
You know, so I feel like, you know, not only are we horse owners and we're type A people, but we're masochists because we beat ourselves up constantly over this internal struggle of taking control and then allowing the learning and taking control and letting it happen. And, you know.
I'm not one of those control freaks. I'm just not like, you know, there is a point where, like, on my own property, if I see something wrong happening, man, I'm going to take control.
Yes.
Because it's going to affect it's going to affect the environment for my horses.
Yes.
And that I am so defensive of.
Yes, absolutely.
But when I get out in public, I have a lot of tolerance.
Yeah.
You know, but here it's like, no, at all costs, I'm going to protect this environment for my horses. People are not going to ruin my horse's environment.
Yes. Well, and I recall seeing that at some clinics too, with you. And I regret that I don't remember the situations, but I do recall you coming in rather sharp on a couple occasions and really just taking that control to help the horses, which is, it's why we're in the business. Yeah.
Yeah. I can think, I think of one, I don't know if you were at that one or not, but sometimes people don't listen and they have all these excuses and they've let the horses down and they've failed the horses. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I get, sometimes when the people just keep giving me feedback of junk, and not listening, and the horse is suffering.
Yeah.
I remember having this. I think it was a Pasofino. I think that was at Ford City, and the one woman that had a broken arm. So the horse had broken her arm during the week.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and the horse was just totally out of control and pushing all over them, and they were just blah, 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 and giving me this. And I finally had to take the horse, and I had to because there's nothing I hate more than getting big with a horse.
Yeah, exactly.
If I did not get big with this horse was going to take somebody out because he didn't know what to do. He was so confused and so scared, and he was just trying to survive.
Yes.
And I had to get big with that horse. I mean, get so big with that horse. And he was up on his hind legs, and everybody goes, And then by the time I was finished, I had the horse more away from the people, took the halter off him, and he was following me.
Yeah.
And I walked him up to these owners that still didn't have a clue. And I looked at him and I said, that was pretty harsh. I said, that was a $400 job I just did there. Because they just were never going to get it.
Yeah.
And this horse was going to die. This horse was going to die because of it. That's when I get mad, is when people are going to, they still will not listen. They come for an instant fix.
Yes.
And that horse is going to be seeing a kill pen.
Yes.
You know it. And it's never the horse's fault. And that horse was so smart. He just wanted direction. He just wanted somebody to listen and somebody to help him. And in 20 minutes, it happened.
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and we can only hope that they picked up on that a little bit.
Yeah, I know they didn't.
Right.
When you come home, I tell you, you come home and you cry a little bit about it.
I know it.
It's hard.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And yet, it's probably the same thing my mechanic goes through every time I go in with the car, right? Because I joke all the time that if it doesn't wear hair, fur, fins, or feathers, I don't understand it in the least, But, and a friend of mine told me years ago that there's 3 kinds of people in the world. There's the kinds that get it. There's the kinds that are trying to get it. Yeah. And then there's the kind that are simply incapable of getting it, either presently or permanently.
Yeah.
And that's okay too, that's okay too. But it's, every time I feel like there's somebody that's just not getting it, I think, Patrick, that's kind of how you are with anything mechanical.
You just relate it to another field.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know I'm that way. And anytime I go in and I'm like, I don't know, John, the car's making this clunk, clunk, clunk noise, And he's like, oh man, this guy just is never going to get it. He's going to ruin this car.
So there are people that look at us exactly the same way as we look at some people.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
It's balance.
Yeah, it is a balance.
Oh my gosh, what a great journey.
Yeah, right? Exactly. I think it's so awesome to have been able to share this journey with you through all these years. And like I say, those quotes and those lectures that you gave have stuck with me all these years. So even though we haven't touched base as frequently as I would like, you've kind of been there on my shoulder very much throughout these years. So it's been fantastic.
Oh my gosh, that's such a funny thing because I always keep saying with Lee being gone, I feel like I always can feel her on my shoulders.
Yeah.
I have said that so many times.
That's fantastic.
She's still here. She's still on my shoulder. We're still working this out together. She's, helping me through all this.
Yes. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad I've had some positive influence.
Oh, and I know you've had more than just a positive influence with me. You've had it with so many people. So many people. So it's been so great. It's been so great. So tell me a little bit about, because I know we can get into these stories and we could go for hours. Tell me just a little bit about you being an amateur elephant trainer. I'm so curious to hear this.
Well, you may not have known about the magazine, but there used to be a magazine, and the Gated Horse people will, because it's not been going that long, called Gated Horse Magazine, and it lasted for 10 years. And Lee Ziegler and I both wrote for that magazine. And I got a call from the editor, Rhonda, asking if she could give my number to a guy who wanted to talk to me about my dotting up horses, gated horses, for structure, so you would know what gait they were going to do, which I did for years. People aren't interested in it anymore, but I used to do it in every clinic.
It's so funny because I do that now. I remember you doing that with the little sales stickers, and I've started doing that this year with different points on the horse to talk about collection and engagement. Yeah.
And lengths and proportions and angles
and
all of that. And so, and it turns out this guy, he's from San Francisco, and he went to the Vietnam War, and he was maimed in the war. And so rather than come back to the U.S. when it was so bad here for Vietnam vets, he stayed and went to Thailand. And so he is one of the public relations, a big fundraiser for the elephant sanctuary in Thailand, which is the government one. It's not a tourist place owned by a private company. It's owned by the government of Thailand. It's a preserve for elephants. And when he came home for Christmas, one year he had family in Kentucky that had 5 gated saddlebreds. And he was telling them about the study that they were working on, that they had to provide elephants and trainers for every November in Thailand. And so they showed him one of my articles in Gated Horse Magazine of dotting up the horses. And they said, "You've got to see this." And so he called Rhonda. I said, "Yes, give him the number." He called me and said, "Would you be interested?" We had the study going on with one scientist from Germany, one scientist from the Royal Veterinary School in England, and they come every November and they bring all their force plate testing, and we provide 40 elephants with their mahouts, trainers, to study biomechanics and locomotion of elephants. Now, granted, these two guys didn't like each other, but there was a huge amount of money donated for this project. And so would you like to come to Thailand and show them this and work with them? And I said, "Oh, I'd love to." Although I was scared to do that because I'd never been to a third world country before.
Okay.
And so anyway, we had it all set up, and then I got a call from him, and he said they had a falling out and they're not coming to do the study, the two researchers, the two professors. But they felt so bad about it, they said, "Would you like to come over and come and work with the elephants?" I mean, the plane ticket, all that stuff was already done.
Oh, gotcha.
So we, I got to have this elephant training program there. So and I said, "Well, can I bring Dave?" Because I was afraid of her. So Dave came, and we went through 2 weeks of this elephant training program, and we lived with the mahouts, the trainers. Yeah. And we had to work with these elephants and learn all of because the elephants did not know English, they knew Thai. So we had to learn Thai, and you had no saddles, no headgear. You were only using feet and legs and emotions and some terms in Thai. And so we had to go with them and do the shows. We had to do 2 shows a day for the public because the largest elephant in the hospital in the world is there.
Wow.
So it's free to all the elephant owners, and there's only about 2,500 elephants left in that country.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, so we had to learn all of this every day in the training ground so we could be part of the shows for the tourists, because the tourists are what brought in money, so they could do that. So we do these two shows, but we'd have to walk up in the jungle every morning. We had to walk through mountain jungle, poisonous snake, monkeys screaming in the trees, fire ant hills. and we had to go get our elephants because they would get put up in the jungle every night because they eat so much. So they'd be chained to trees because they were big, long chains, but they had to be chained because there's still landmines in that country.
Oh, right.
And so there was already one elephant already in the hospital that had its leg blown off, and they were doing a prosthetic leg for it and that because of the landmine.
And those were the landmines from the Vietnam War.
Yeah, from the wars. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then we'd have to put that chain, we'd have to groom them there in the jungle, ask them to lay down, groom them, and then work the chains over the neck, and then get up on top of them, sit on those chains all the way down the mountain to the training ground, which we were at all day, and we did these, and we'd have to bathe them on our way down because they need water to keep their skin moist.
Right.
And then the mahouts would be helping us learn how to teach them and get a vocab, how to get them to lay down, how to bow, where you could do a vault run over there. You'd have to vault, you'd have to get way back, and you'd have to run as fast as you could and do like a handstand on their head, and then get your legs over their ears. And then they get up, and you'd have to turn around and face forward. So we had to learn how to do all these mounts from them using their legs to help you with a set of stairs, or vaulting, or dismounting from the front of their faces. We would have to pick up the elephant down in the yard, so your elephant would take the trunk and pick up the dung cart, because they actually had a paper factory, so all the elephant dung was made into paper, shipped all over the world. Really?
Wow.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And so you'd be putting the dung in to go to the paper factory, and then you'd have to hose them off. So you'd get on your elephant, and give them a verbal cue, and they'd turn on the faucet, give you the hose, so you could spray them.
Wow.
I mean, they played musical instruments.
Oh, that's
They actually
fantastic.
did work there where they were pulling and moving posts to create fencing. There were big lakes there, that you could take the elephants around to walk, to swim in. I mean, it was quite an experience. And my elephant, because elephants get very attached to people. They're very loving.
Mm-hmm.
They're highly intelligent. They're very emotional, and they get very connected. So every elephant has two mahouts.
Mm-hmm.
In case one has to go, there's always another one there, and they get very attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, the really thing was that my elephant Sing Kong really taught me, because she knew everything. I just had to learn everything to ask her to do things.
Gotcha. She was your schoolmaster.
There was one thing I taught her. And she had been a logging elephant, because logging teak there is illegal. And so now, there's a lot of elephants that are starving and dying in that, in that country, because people are still trying to keep them hurt privately. And so she had been a logging elephant donated to the sanctuary. And she was very timid. And at the end of every show we would do, I don't know, there'd be 14 to 20 elephants with mahouts, and I was on Sing Kong. And at the end, one of the things to do was the tourists would pay money to get bananas.
Okay.
And feed the elephants. And so we'd give our elephants permission to go up to the fencing with these big bamboo steps and stuff people would sit on, seats and that.
Mm-hmm.
And my elephant was so timid, and she would always hesitate to be behind, where all the other elephants, a lot of the other ones, they already knew it, so they were heading, when they were given permission, man, they were going for those bananas to give for the tourists to give them.
Right.
And she was very shy, and so that was my goal, was to make her get more, to become a beggar. I'm really good at teaching my daughter dogs to bed too. And so I really worked hard on that. And by the time, when I'd be sitting on her and I'd get up to the fence and I'd be begging the tourist, look at her, she's looking for the elephant, here she is. I tried to get the tourist away from the other exuberant elephants to her so she would get more.
Oh, there you go.
And it worked. And so that by the time I left, she was heading to that fence, and she had learned to flap her ears in that happy joy that elephants do.
Yes.
And draw in the tourists, and it was great. And, you know, I had so many experiences there that I couldn't keep my hands off her, and they have a coarse hair. It's very coarse. And you would think by rubbing this coarse hair, your hands would get raw, and my hands never got sore, and I could not keep my hands off her. I was always rubbing her. And I had one of the mahouts, which was one of my teachers there, Dom. He asked me one day, because I'm on Sincan, and I'm just riding around the grounds on her, and he walks up beside me. He says, how many children, he doesn't speak good English, but he speaks some English, and he says, how many children do you have? 4? I'm going, no. He says, 3, and he holds up his finger. I said, no, I have 0, and he looks at me, he says, no children? You love very much.
Oh.
And I had another day that I was riding Sincan up along the road, and she stopped. And she just stopped. And she wouldn't go, and I'm like, tack along, and she wouldn't move. And I hear somebody laughing behind me, and it's another mahout, and he turns to me, and he says, he points the back of her, and so I get up and on the back of her, I crawl along her back, and hear her tail, because they have this big, hairy, coarse tail, at the end of their tail. It was stuck in the fork of a tree.
Oh, no. Wow.
So he took the tail out, and I said, tackle, and then off we went. But she learned so much about me and who and what I was.
Yes.
And so every day when I would dismount, every time I dismounted, because you're getting up and down, and she would always learned to lower her head, because they're huge. Yes. And bring her eye down to my level, and she would let me kiss the lower part of right under her eye every time. It was just like her. And then when I would do things right, she would take her trunk and bring it up to the top of her head with the finger on her trunk and touch my hands to say, good, good.
That's fantastic. Wow. Yeah. She was teaching you for sure.
She was really teaching me, and we really hooked. It was very, very hard. And the last day I was there, she and I had really connected, and they let me go with her around the lake, just her and I. And she was trumpeting a lot, just this trumpeting. And I hadn't heard her do that. I heard her, her purring, because elephants will have this purr, and the ears flap, and, but she was doing this trumpeting. And I asked him, Colin, what's wrong? He says, she's sad you're leaving.
Aww.
So this was, there's so many stories, but it was quite an experience. And I came back a better horse teacher from that.
I'll bet. Yeah.
It was just, it just opened another door.
Yes.
To listen more and help more. It just took me another step, and it came at a time that I really needed it too.
Isn't that the way that it works too? Isn't that amazing?
In its time, for its reason.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Oh gosh, that's awesome. So I could listen to stories like this all evening, and we've just gone over 2 hours on our broadcast so far.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I say that every time I do one of these. They've lasted for way longer than I ever anticipate that they will, and I look up and I'm like, oh wow, we've been at it for quite a while. Would you mind if we take a couple quick questions from our online listeners?
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Great.
I don't guarantee anything.
Good. So we've got a number of folks that have been listening the whole time here, and Kathy sends in a message. I now own a Rocky and have never trained a gaited horse, so I'm training him using low-level dressage techniques and starting with self-carriage. I'd like him to gait in a more natural frame with a snaffle rather than a shank to save his hocks. Is that possible?
Oh, yes, Kathy. Usually around here, everything's in a snaffle, a side pull, or bussaw.
Perfect. I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sometimes it's the less is so much more with a gaited horse, and as we've talked about, it's been about the emotion and then guiding, supporting directly only as much as you need to know more. And a shank bit, it takes a lot of skill and a lot of time with the right instructor to learn, and actually what I say, earn one.
Yeah, absolutely. The shank bit is so much of a compound communication instrument.
It's opposing pressures.
Yes.
And so when you have opposing pressures coming from different directions, especially if a horse hasn't been started in a snaffle or bitless first, because we would never go to a curb until later.
Right.
You earned your curb and you used it because you really didn't need it.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it is absolutely possible, yes. Just, but I love the low-level dressage and the self-carriage, because I have so many gaited horse people trying to get them to go to classical instructors rather than gaited horse people first.
Yes.
If they don't have a classical background, I really try to get them, to go, if a gaited horse trainer does not have a classical background, I try to get them to go to a classical dressage instructor. You don't need gait for you to know anything about gait to teach the basics.
Yep. That makes so much sense. Okay, so Cheryl sends in a question that is really interesting to me. I've heard that Tennessee walking horses have become too walkerish. Do you feel this is true? Do you know what that means?
That's a new one on me, but you know what?
Okay.
There's new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what walkerish means.
Okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't know how to approach it because I don't know what it is. That's a new term for me.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, sorry, Cheryl. Hopefully, if you can send us in some more information on maybe what folks are meaning when they say walkerish, maybe we'll be able to give you a better answer.
Kind of definition of it.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, let's see. So scrolling down. Okay, so this is very interesting. So now, and I know a little bit, just knowing background of how Western dressage has gotten started and now gaited dressage getting started. This is a question from Shauna, and Shauna sends in, what is Ms. Graves' opinion of gaited horse dressage tests? And forgive me, I don't know if they're tested under Western dressage or cowboy dressage, but they're well-designed tests, and the judges are the judges experts in gaited horse dressage? So what do you think about gaited horse dressage?
I love it. I'm a big advocate. I'm not a member. I'm not involved in an organization because I don't like organizations. But we have a wonderful one out there called Fosh, Friends of the Sound Horse.
Yes.
That did an amazing job in doing a gaited dressage horse rule book. And I think you can actually purchase it. I was part of, with a whole bunch of people trying to develop that because Cowboy Dressage organization had come to Fosh wanting to include gaited horses in their program. And what they had, we didn't accept because they didn't have anything.
Gotcha.
Even for regular horses, it just wasn't anything there at that point. It's changed now. It's really grown since then. So eventually they adopted the Fosh rules for the cowboy dressage and the tests and that, because Fosh did just a fabulous job, and a job in defining and helping educate also through their rule book and how to school for it. So they definitely have their place. I don't know anything about Western dressage. I just know about cowboy dressage, obviously, because of Jack Brainerd, who's
Okay.
one of my childhood teachers.
Yep.
And Jack's very involved in that. And I know that through the cowboy dressage, the gaited horses have been so embraced now that they've got the rules and what it is, and gaited mules. I mean, it has been such a great place for the gaited horses to go. And and it's not, I think one of the things I like about it so much is I really like that it's not a lettered pattern. I have a course up here too, a dressage court up here on my property as well. But what I love about the cowboy part of it is that they put different obstacles, and they really work on getting that horse relaxed and comfortable. It's not pushed, it's not hard.
Right.
And it's really human and horse friendly. And that's what I'm really, and they didn't used to be, but boy, it has come a long way. So there is definitely a place for it. And even if you have a gaited horse that doesn't gait, or even if you have a gaited horse that trots, and guess what? It's okay to trot your gaited horse because the gait's not going to go away. And it's a healthy posture as well. And a conditioning posture if it's done in a proper collected trot. But I have seen some really good gaited horses that also had nice trots, put through traditional dressage courses, training levels. I can think of Diane Sept, who was wonderful. She's a clinician who was wonderful at doing that and really had great success in doing that. And these horses did great. So there is a place. You just have to, I don't know if it's in your own backyard, but if it's not in your backyard, get something going.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know I've got a number of students. In fact, I have one barn that is really active with Western dressage. So not the cowboy dressage, but the Western dressage primarily through North American Western Dressage, an organization that does a lot of virtual shows. So you can basically ride your test at home and submit it to be judged in their competitions.
That's how they do it in Canada.
Yeah, right.
In Canada is done that way because I have a lot of Canadian clients that do compete their Western dressage in that.
Yep.
They don't have cowboy dressage up there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So I've got a lot of students that are competing their gaited horses in the Western dressage, and they're loving it. They're loving it. It's great stuff.
Yeah. So definitely, folks, we belong in dressage.
Absolutely.
With our gaited horses, no question. There is a place for us.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great. Okay, so Kelly sends in, I have a Rocky Mountain mare and her filly that I took in on a rescue situation. The mare is very trotty. She's more bumpy than my quarter horse. She will not gait, but her filly is so naturally gaited, just goes along so smooth. I cannot get my Rocky to gait at all. Is there situations that a Rocky will not ever be able to gait? I've had others ride her as well and no change.
Okay. So I don't know without seeing the horse. Okay. If the filly has got, a real natural, easy gait right now, it could be because, oh my gosh, we get some of these in here too, that are on the opposite end. All they do is pace instead of trot. And to break up the pace, it takes a ton of work. Same with some of these hard trotting horses. So that tells me, in my opinion, that I still got to see the horse's structure, because that would help me a lot. But a lot of times it's the previous training. So they have rewired the horse. It doesn't mean the gait isn't there, but it's buried so deep. The nervous system has rearranged to trot. That's what that horse thinks it's supposed to do, and it's afraid maybe to do something else. Gotcha. It's just like some of the gaited horses, the show walkers, that were only 2 gait horses and they were not allowed to canter, and you try to go and teach them how to do canter, and they're terrorized to canter because they weren't allowed to.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so, I can only help so much, but, if the filly has got a really strong gait, something's happened to that horse, and you just got to get with the right person. You got to get with the right person that can help you.
For sure. So that's actually going to bring me into a question that I had written here separately from actually from my Facebook group, the Patrick King Horsemanship discussion group. There was a gal who posted a message about a standardbred, a rescued standardbred, who had been driven on the track and then was an Amish cart horse for a while, and now belongs to, I believe, if I remember the post correctly, belongs to some friends of hers, and they're struggling to get the horse to canter, which makes perfect sense. I mean, I grew up actually with the standardbred track, spent a little bit of time working there as well. So, and of course, with the cart horses, generally they don't want them to be cantering. So their post was,
they won't let them at all. That's right. That
exactly.
is a bad thing.
Exactly. That's bad news. Right. Exactly. That's very bad news in the buggy. So now, but these folks are interested in helping the horse or encouraging the horse to canter. And they're running into a lot of challenges with the horse because, of course, anxiety is coming up and things like that, because basically it's been told its whole life it's not allowed to when there's a human involved, right? So what's your opinion on that? Is that something, is there a time when you draw the line and you say, look, I'm just not going to put the horse through this?
Yeah, you know, if the horse gets emotionally to the point where it's falling apart and dangerous, I wouldn't put the horse through it. But if it's not, and you can really get a sense that the horse just doesn't know how to do it with a person on its back, yet you've got a relationship and it's willing to give you a try, I'd take a horse like that and I'd trail ride it in a place where they've got a lot of hills.
Okay.
And just let that horse open up and get over it a little bit in a forward seat and joyfully say, "Go, let's go, come on, baby, let's go," and see if you can get that horse to canter up a hill, because and then when it does, good boy, good girl, you know, and all positive, and just, I mean, make a huge fuss and make their emotions feel good about what they just did.
Yes.
So, you know, you have to get, again, you kind of have to get your hands on the horse to know what emotions are there. And what can't be done and what could be done with the right work. Yes. Standardbreds canter just fine.
Absolutely, right.
But they're, you know, some of them have been said, no, you cannot, and they're terrorized of it because they're afraid what's going to come.
Right, exactly. Because as far as they know, that's wrong. So that makes perfect sense. Put them in a situation where it becomes a happy accident.
A happy accident.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Pam wants to know, and she's been very patient and persistent with this. She sent in the question a couple of times. She wants to know, have you ever seen or ridden a McCurdy plantation horse? I believe that's one of the horses you mentioned early on in the broadcast. Is that right?
Yep. I've had some come in for training, and you know what they are is Tennessee walking horses. I don't care what their I don't care what their website says.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of propaganda there as being something unique in the swamp horse, and that they have a walking horse background, and you find I've had some that are really hard pacers. I've had some that are really hard trotters, and some of them that actually will foxtrot, some that will running walk. Some that will saddle rack, some that will fox rack, do a diagonal saddle rack.
Oh.
So it's quite a mix because there's just been a lot of horses mixed within this history. There's nothing, you know, but it originally was more of a walking horse start, but it's been a lot of delusion, and it's been the association owned by one family, controlled by one family, and not had a lot of luck with them knowing what the gates are either, trying to get the horses certified. Gotcha.
Okay, so I would assume this would be the McCurdy family then, if it's the McCurdy plantation horse. Oh, wait a minute. Does that mean politics and ego are involved?
Yes.
Oh, goodness. See what happens when we get at beyond the 2-hour mark of this, you know, filters start to come off. That's very interesting. So then that's a breed, and that's one that I'd not heard of until you mentioned it earlier, and then Pam reminded us of it.
Yeah, they started their own registry. breed.
Gotcha. So originally it was the Tennessee Walkers, and now they've become infused, so they're more of an amalgamation of a few different breeds? Okay.
Yeah, so you get a lot of variables.
Gotcha. Okay. And I would assume, particularly in the early lineage of a breed that's a mix like that, you're going to have quite a few different gaits presented within each generation.
And what a good point, Patrick, because we do every single gated breed we see horses that will do multi-gates or not do the signature gait. Who picks the signature gait? People do. And not all horses will do the signature gait of what's on their registration papers. You know, it doesn't matter that we see all the gaits through all the breeds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness, this has been so much fun, Liz.
It has. It's been a blast.
And I've got.
How much time we've been talking.
I know, right? I've got. And I know you and we both make a living talking, so we could probably go on for way longer.
Yeah, probably for a week.
Right? Oh my goodness. This is fantastic. So I'm ready to go into my wrap-up questions, unless there are any topics that we haven't touched on that you would like to hit.
No, not that I can think of.
Okay, perfect.
I'll probably think of them later tonight before I go to sleep.
Right. Well, we can certainly do this again. 2017 is almost finished, so.
Yeah, anytime.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so let me think here. Our wrap-up questions. If there was one specific thing that you could recommend for riders to focus on as a primary means of improving their horsemanship, what would that be?
Working on their own emotions.
Wow, that was easy. You had that one right on the tip of your tongue. I love it.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
If everything you are, you take to the horse.
That's so true. That is so true. If you could ride with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Can I name two?
You can name as many as you want.
One past and one present?
You bet, definitely.
Okay. One past would be to ride with Nuno Oliveira, who I study insanely.
Yes.
And am a student of one of his students, actually.
Which one?
I would love to have ridden with him. And then I would love to ride with Manolo Menendez.
Yes, Manolo. Absolutely.
I love his work.
That's fantastic.
I love his work.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So you said that you ride with a student of Nuno's. Who was that?
I did. His name was Herman Baca from Peru.
Okay.
And he's Sir Herman Baca, and he is from Peru. And his father, there's even probably some old videos online, would have Nuno go down to Peru and teach often.
Gotcha.
As Herman was a youngster. And then Herman now lives in the U.S., and he's in California and works a lot with Peruvians, but he's done bullfighting horses. And I spent some time with him up in Edmonton, Canada, because I'd heard of his background. And to watch him work at a big place called Rancho Serrano up in Canada, and we traded. And so he wanted to know about the other gated horse breeds, and I wanted to know about any Peruvians, because I was showing Peruvians then, so many of them. And so we traded, and I, stayed up in a little tiny room up there while he and his wife were up there on kind of a hiatus from the industry.
Okay.
for a while. And she was an Andalusian trainer, amazing Andalusian trainer.
Wow.
And we'd be up till 3 o'clock in the morning talking about our problems, trying to deal with the people part of it, and working horses all day. And I can tell you, he's the one man that watching him work, I'd be crouched down and sitting on my foot on the ground, watching him work, a colt or something in the round pen there, and you feel tears coming down your face.
Yeah.
Because you've never seen anything so beautiful.
That's fantastic.
And so touching, and I thought, and to this day, now that I've studied Nuno for so long and got as much of his work as I've been able to get my hands on. I've got tons of it here. He was teaching as he was taught by Nuno. The emotional part of it was and he really gave me my hands also, you know.
Oh.
I thought my mother gave me my hands, but Herman gave me my hands. He made me, instead of just having hands, he made my hands ears.
Yeah. Oh, I love the sound of that.
Yeah, so now I'm just such a, you know, freedom of hands things. Don't go there until you have to.
Yes.
You know, and when you do, ask as little as possible.
Right.
You know, protect that head, protect that sacred head.
Yes. That's awesome to hear you say that. We're actually gearing up. These broadcasts are going to take about a 6-week hiatus, as a matter of fact, because I'm heading to Portugal in January. Going to be spending about 6 weeks with Nuno Oliveira's old partner, Luis Valencia, in Portugal. So that's going to be fantastic.
I have to ask, is the old arena, has that place been sold, or is he still working there?
I can't answer that question yet. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, you know, take pictures in that, because I know
Absolutely.
his old arena, because I have so many videos of it.
Oh, okay. Well, we're hoping...
So I watched a lot of his work done in that arena.
Awesome.
It was a magical place.
I'm sure. So the hope is that we're going to still be sharing videos and photos while we're there. Hoping to do some live videos, actually, while we're there learning.
That would be awesome. And you know, Mark Russell was a student of Nuno.
Yes.
Our great Mark Russell, who was lost last year.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. If he was around, I'd want to ride with him too.
He was such a great man. Such a great man. Good friend of mine.
Huge loss to everybody, I'm telling you, huge loss. Absolutely.
And his wife, Hala, is working on a new addition to his book, Lessons in Lightness. And
you're kidding?
No, Mark was working on a revision, and she's working to finish that revision, and she's also working through several hundred hours of video footage of lessons to hopefully put out some more of Mark's work. Yes.
This is so good to hear.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. That's so exciting.
Absolutely. It's quite a task. I can't even imagine trying to tackle it. But she's working very hard on that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
cool.
Awesome stuff.
That's good to hear. That's the best news of the month.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad to have been able to give that to you. That's great. Good. Okay, so what is your present personal definition of horsemanship?
Oh, you stumped me on that one.
Oh, that one gets everybody.
Yeah. Okay, read that again.
Okay.
Re-say it again.
Okay, because I know it changes, right? It's fluctual. What is your present personal definition of horsemanship?
I'm still stumped. Oh my gosh. You got another 4 hours.
Oh, well, I mean, I do, but I think Facebook kicks us off after 4 hours. So, we've got another hour and a half to go.
Gosh, I don't know. I feel like for me, some really crazy things have happened to me here in my own journey. So kind of let me explain why I'm at this place, and I can't answer this. I grew up in the show ring, showing for my mother's clients and for my mom, and then went on my own and showed as a professional for clients for many years, and getting all the judges' cards and all that. And when I came off the road as a professional exhibitor, there was a freedom, a little bit of a freedom that happened, that happened inside of me, because now I didn't have to ride for the show ring. I didn't have to have all these contrived seats for all these different disciplines I rode and different breeds I rode, gated or not, for what the new, the current image was that the judges wanted to see in the show ring.
Mm.
And so I didn't have to do that anymore. And then when there was so all I had to do was train the horses that came in here. I didn't have to train them because I was taking them to a show ring.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of freedom. But then, and it kept kind of growing a little bit here. But then, what has it been, 6 years ago? There was something that became really freeing. And this was when I was, it was myself, Jack Brainerd, and Richard Shrake, who was a long-time old friend too.
Mm-hmm.
And we were working the horse fair together. And we were sitting around one evening eating dinner together in a hotel. And we were talking about our judges' lives, and I was the baby of the group because I'd only been judging for like 32 years.
Oh.
Jack had been judging with many, many cards, and same with Jack and Richard, so you're probably talking 55 years with Richard and 60 years or 65 years with Jack combined. Well, three of us sitting there, and we were talking about what the show world had done and what had happened and how miserable we were. We hated the politics. We didn't like the rules. We didn't like what was happening to the horses. We were seeing the torture in the horses' eyes and their bodies. And so that year, the three of us decided together, we're not judging anymore. We gave up all our cards.
Wow.
And when we did that, I know for me, when I did that, it was like this huge explosion of freedom happened for me. Because now I could do anything the way I wanted to do it and not held hostage by any rules, by any other people's opinions. I could just train and teach people and do clinics, because it helped me through my clinics too.
Yeah.
And my philosophy that worked for me one-on-one in what I do here at home. And so I guess I'm still finding that definition of horsemanship for me because I'm still finding it myself now that I have this freedom.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me. Yes.
So it's been, okay, there's your answer.
I love it. That's good. That's great, though. That's great. And that, that speaks very much to how things change as we grow, as we evolve, as we find new understandings and in this case, new freedoms, right?
Do you know the story of Boucher? Have you studied any of his work?
I know a few stories of Boucher, yeah.
Okay. Well, what you just said really relates to a story that resonates so much to me with him, and everybody knows this story if they've done any study or know anything about him. But, his pre-accident work was brutal.
Yes.
He was a circus entertainer.
Mm-hmm.
And the cavalry, the German and the French cavalry, wouldn't even take his methods.
Right.
They rejected him.
Right. What we now refer to as Boucher's first manner, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then he had the accident where the chandelier came down on him and a horse and maimed him.
Yes.
And so he was maimed, and he changed his ways and he was the one who quoted hands without legs, legs without hands.
Yes.
And so their life experience and maturity and deep thought and reality checks that make you fix your insides, bring you to better, bigger places. I feel like so much right now is in so many ways, I'm just getting started again.
I love that.
So, because I have so much now I can do my way.
Yes.
The way that the horses tell me it's okay.
Yes. That reminds me of the quote from my mentor, Ray Hunt. He would say, it takes a lifetime to learn how to live a lifetime.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and it's over too quick.
Right? Oh, my goodness.
But use it wisely. Don't use it frivolously.
For sure, right? For sure.
That's where people go wrong.
Yep.
I get a little upset when people say, they're 50s and 60s. I haven't decided what I want to be yet. And I'm like, Okay, lost cause.
Get on that, right?
Yeah, time to grow up.
Yeah, for sure. Oh gosh, that's awesome. Okay, so what book are you currently reading, or what was the last book that you read?
Oh, well, there's one that I spend a lot of time in
Okay.
right now because of the lesson plans in it. Now, it's really inexpensive and it's a rare book. It's hard to find, but I pick this book up all the time, and it's called Horses and Riders by Nuno Oliveira. And it's only 110 pages, and it's all about his lesson plans because he would go to Australia and teach often, and that's where he passed away. Also, but it's full of his lesson plans, and so these lesson plans really work really well for me here, especially since I have a really a classical arena.
Okay.
But I will warn you, this book is $375 to $400 when you can find it.
When you can find it, yeah.
Yeah, but when the economy gets bad, or people like around Christmas and that, you might be able to find a copy because they're like ABE books. Look at Amazon, and this book I go to so often because of the lesson plans.
Okay.
And so teaching here all the time, and it's one of my. I have some really expensive books, but this one is one of my all-time favorites. And I take care of it, but I read it a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to be looking for that one. I have the, what is the one that I have? Reflections on Equestrian Art. I know I have that one.
Oh, I think I have that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. They have, it's also on an audiobook now. I spend so much time driving. There's a lot of the books have been transferred to audiobook, like Steinbrecht's book.
I listen to audiobooks all the time, but I'm just not, and I'll tell you another one that I really, we could talk books forever because I have a monstrous library here.
That's awesome.
But there's another one I recommend to people all the time because of the lesson plans in it. And so it's got a lot of images of what's the right shape, what's the wrong way to do something, and it's called The Workbook from the Spanish Riding School.
Oh, yeah.
1951 by Charles Harris.
Yep.
And he took all his notes and put it in the back of this book. The biography is fascinating anyway. He was a very interesting man. But I love all of his notes here. It's so clear anybody can understand it. And he did drawings to go with it. And this is another really great book for references for doing homework.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
a homework person. We all have homework.
Yes, that's a book actually that was shared with me at a clinic I was teaching in New York, a clinic host of mine. I believe it was given to her as a gift, and she shared that one with me last time I was there. It is a fantastic book.
It is a fantastic book.
Yeah.
It's excellent. And then my third backup I really like is Thomas Ritter's book that he put out because it's good. It's a good teaching book in the way he laid it out.
Okay.
And it's called Dressage Principles Based on Biomechanics.
Oh, nice.
He did such a good job because it starts people from the beginning, no matter what level you are, and gets you all the way through. And he is such an exceptional teacher.
Yes.
And he's not in the U.S. anymore. He's back in Germany, but he's putting out great material.
He is, absolutely. And he's doing a lot of online stuff now. I've seen a lot of Facebook broadcasts and things. Yeah.
Yeah, I follow all his online stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, seems like great stuff.
A new age master that is still alive.
Yes, right. Somebody to look up for sure.
We got to cherish them.
For sure. Absolutely. All right. Speaking of, how can folks find you?
Oh, that's easy. You can. I have a website at www.lizgraves.com, or is it .com? Yeah. And also .org. I also own the thing lizgraves.org.
Perfect.
And then you can find me on Facebook. You can email me at lizgraves@centurytale.net. You can call me at 346-2422. That's my landline here. I'm not a big cell phone person. Actually, mine's been off for quite a while here, for days here.
That's very generous of you to give that out. There's been hundreds of people listening to this that might bump in and call you.
Yeah, but I have always said at the end of my clinics, you know, and Lee and I, this is something about Lee and I that was, you know, she and I were working so hard because when we got into the gaited horses, we were so much just, well, what are, she and I would ask, well, what's the gait? What's this mean? What the horse is doing? Why does this happen? And the old timers in the South would say, well, just get on and go. Well, that told us nothing, especially two brainiacs like we are. Right. You know, and so that was our search for knowledge and to define it and make it easy and get this information out here for people to learn that they could do it. And so I've always said at the end of my clinics, you know, I'm not your psychiatrist. But if you have a horse question or there's anything I can do to help, and I may not have the answers, but maybe we can find somebody that does. Yeah. Call me or contact me and we'll work on it.
That's fantastic.
So we're not alone in this together. Right. Nobody should feel alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially with the ease of communication anymore. I mean, look, we're a 14-hour drive apart. And we're doing this broadcast here. I mean, there was a time when that was 6 months in a wagon and half of our families would die of dysentery, right? And
that's the way it was.
Right? Exactly. And we're able to do this now. And we have people, I'm sure of it, we have people logged in right now listening from all over the world to what we're doing here. So the world is big, it's global, and it's tiny all at the same time, you know. So
and just as long as we can just keep networking to help everybody, we can help.
Exactly.
And you know, the other thing that I you know, is kind of, I got to put out here is none of us are experts. We're all students. We are all students, every one of us. So be careful if you put yourself out there as an expert and don't understand you're a student.
Yeah. Oh, man, yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're dead in the water.
Yep.
You're just done. You stopped. You're at the stop sign.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, the ones who claim they're experts, those are probably the ones to stay away from, you know.
Yep.
That's Ray used to say that. Ray Hunt used to say that to us. He'd say, you know, if somebody came to me to a clinic and they brought a horse and they said that they were a trainer, I would guess the horse was in trouble. If they came to me and they said they were a professional trainer, I knew their horse was in trouble.
In trouble. That's when people come here to my barn and they give me this whole spiel. Oh, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. I'm like, right off, I know we got a problem.
Yep, absolutely.
Because they're trying to sell themselves.
Yes.
Instead of asking questions.
Yes.
You know, instead of giving me a sell, ask questions.
Yes.
You know, and let's share ideas and experiences.
Yes.
That's horsemanship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh gosh.
And we don't have to agree.
No, and that's where people get offended if they don't agree with someone or if someone doesn't agree with them. I think the best conversations I've had with people have been the people that don't agree. And we can both own the fact that we don't agree and we talk about things. You know, own it without the baggage, you know? Yeah. Awesome.
Be okay, and then like Lee and I do, type a letter to each other later.
Right? Yes, exactly. Or, you know, anymore, it would be, I got blocked on Facebook and, you know. Oh, gosh.
Well, I have to confess, I have a ton of people blocked on Facebook.
Well,
I don't want to unfriend them because I don't want to offend them, but if they're obnoxious, or if they live in a world of constant politics, I don't want that baggage in my head. I just want to talk horses.
I get it. Oh, I totally get it. I've gotten to the point where it's bad. I shouldn't even admit this, but I've gotten to the point where I'm really fast at unfriending people on Facebook because I got to the point a couple months ago, Facebook told me I had a limit and that I reached, it said that I reached my limit. And I said, well, who the hell really has 5,000 friends, you know? So it's like when I see some stuff that shows up that's just really ridiculous, I'm like, yeah, okay, I gotten really quick at clicking that unfriend button.
Yeah, and I've screened. I mean, even before I friend anybody new.
Yeah.
I screen. If I don't see a horse,
Yeah. Oh,
or
exactly.
family, I don't friend them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I shouldn't even admit this, but I've got like in the friend request queue, I've probably got like 60 friend requests, and it's like, oh man, I got to take the time to look through that and see who I know.
Yeah. No, I get on that right away because I'm always afraid of hackers. So I just like, I get like, if they don't have a horse or I don't know them,
Yep.
I just immediately decline.
Yep, absolutely. Has your account been hacked yet? It seems like so many have. No? Good.
But I'm so careful. Maybe tomorrow I will be, but I'm just so careful.
Yeah. I had someone send me a screenshot, this was months ago, maybe even a year ago, of someone who had sent them a friend request. And it was a photo of my daughter and I, actually. It was like my account had been hacked or copied or whatever. Yeah, they got it. Yeah. Somebody by a totally different name. And it was interesting. So, and Facebook is great at handling that. And the person was dealt with immediately. So it was, it was great. But
well, it's good to know they're good at handling it. I haven't had that situation yet, but if I
it was
now I know.
Like within 15 minutes, that person didn't even exist anymore on Facebook. It was
awesome.
It was super fast. I was super, super pleased with how they handled it. So, okay. So, all right, next question. And this is the question that I love. This is my favorite question on these broadcasts. So almost every time I do a video or a broadcast like this, we do a question of the day where I ask the question for our audience. Our audience gets to answer the question of the day. And it's just random stuff that pops into my head. But when I have it is so much fun. So when I have a guest on, the guest gets to ask the question of the day. So now I'm going to throw the ball in your court. What is our question of the day?
Okay, so this is going to get complicated.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because the question of the day for each person is going to be different. So this is what I want. I want them to ask themselves a question of, what is my next goal for myself with my horse? And everybody will have a different one, but what is my goal with myself and my horse?
I love that. I love that. And what a perfect way to wrap up our last broadcast, actually, of 2017.
Awesome. I love it. This is a blast.
I love that. Thank you so much. So, gang, if you're out there listening, you've got Liz's question of the day. What is your goal for yourself and your horse? We want to hear that. I know I'm going to be checking in. I imagine Liz is going to be checking in to see what your answers are. Give your answers to that in the comments section below this video. Liz, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
It has been wonderful. What? Gosh, I feel like we've been sitting in the same room.
Right? Exactly. Just think how long we'd go if we were.
Oh my gosh. The one thing is keep doing these. Keep getting all these wonderful people you've been getting
thank you.
to do these because they're just so valuable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And this has been officially, I'm going to give you this one, Liz, this little insight. We're now at over 2 hours and 47 minutes. This has been the longest talking about horses broadcast that I have done. I thought Warwick Schiller and I could talk for a long time, but you and I have beat that record.
Oh gosh, you're getting close to my mother and I usually was no less than 3 or 4 hours, and it was horses for 3 to 4 hours.
Oh, there you go.
So you've entered that family circle there.
Perfect. Well, it's nice to be part of such a good family that way. I love it.
Oh, great.
Oh, great.
You have a good evening, and I hope everybody out there has a good evening, and we gave them some food for thought.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you so much.
And we'll be in touch. You come this way when you get this way.
Perfect. I look forward to that. I will be in touch, and we will, we're going to make that happen.
Okay.
So,
super.
Great. All right. You have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, gang. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 22 of Talking About Horses. I really appreciate you giving Liz and I your ear. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access this full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, or by streaming from iTunes. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share. Your word of mouth is the fuel for this fire. Next week is part of the Christmas holiday, so I'll be enjoying that with family, as I hope you all will be also. As 2017 comes to a close and 2018 rolls in, I'm booking guests for this broadcast and would love your recommendations. Who would you like to hear from here on Talking About Horses? Send me your requests either in a comment on this broadcast or by email to office@pkhorsemanship.com. Thanks so much, gang.